Chapter 970. Tang Jing took a step forward with his sword, blocking Song Jiangwang's line of sight. Song Jiangwang was startled and said, "What, you still dare to clamor with me?" Tang Jing sneered, "Song Jiangwang, do you really think that you can casually control me by looking down on me like this? Isn't that so?" Song Jiangwang asked back, looking at Tang Jing in ridicule. "Then you'll know once you try." Dizong of Goguryeo also seemed to want to know Tang Jing's strength, and looked at Tang Jing meaningfully, but did not interrupt. Seeing that Dizong of Goguryeo did not say a word, Song Jiangwang's expression changed rapidly. It was thought-provoking, and thought to himself that the relationship between Dizong of Goguryeo and this living person seemed to be somewhat strange. Since Dizong of Goguryeo did not object, wouldn't that be exactly what he wanted? "Since you don't know what's good for you, then I'll fulfill your wish," Song Jiangwang said with killing intent. His figure flashed and attacked Tang Jing. Good timing. Tang Jing gave a low roar. The heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow appeared in his hands. With a flash of the arrow, the shooting sun arrow flew towards Song Jiangwang. Song Jiangwang's face was filled with shock. This was because when the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow were displayed, he could tell that they were not ordinary. He immediately thought of a rumor that he had heard before. Back then, a human expert had appeared in Yama Palace and also used a bow and arrow. He had even left an arrow in Yama King's hands and kept it like a treasure. But later on, this person fell into the river Styx and died. Now, another archer had appeared, and he could also freely walk in the ghost realm. Could it be that there was a connection between the two of them? Before he could think about it carefully, the shooting sun arrow had already arrived in front of him. The yin qi in the 18 levels of hell was as viscous as the seawater, surging towards Song Jiangwang like a tidal wave, enveloping him in an instant. Song Jiangwang extended his hand, and the Yama seal descended from the sky, colliding with the shooting sun arrow. The surging yin qi directly rushed towards the pool below. Boom! The water vapor splashed the black water all over the sky, like an angry dragon flying towards both sides. Two rays of light blossomed on the two people's bodies. The black water fell on the light rays and made a sizzling sound, but it did not hurt the two people at all. Dizong of Goguryeo sat in the middle of the pool. The waves were turbulent, but they did not harm him in the slightest. Moreover, his eyes were filled with interest as he watched the battle between the two. The battle was extremely intense. Waves of energy flew everywhere, and the 18 layers of hell seemed to have changed completely. The heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows released a huge amount of power, and the Yama's seal was not to be underestimated either. Tang Jing was almost certain that this Yama's seal was a divine weapon that was even more powerful than the King of Hell's seal of the Chakravarti King. It was on par with the King of Hell's seal. In addition, Song Jiangwang's cultivation was at least at the semi-god realm. Therefore, even though Tang Jing had the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows, he was still unable to defeat him. However, Dizong of Goguryeo's eyes became brighter and brighter, because Tang Jing's fighting strength had already far exceeded his expectations. The heavenly Tao did not lie to him, and attracted such a strong human expert. Tang Jing was not too surprised. After all, he had seen the power of the King of Hell, so he already had a preliminary estimate. Just as he was about to summon the four symbols venerable to deal with Song Jiangwang, a monstrous black wave suddenly rose up and struck towards the two of them. The appearance of this black wave was extremely sudden and inexplicable, causing Tang Jing and Song Jiangwang to not be able to defend against it. As a result, the black wave directly drenched their heads. Sizzle! Immediately, a series of sounds like roasting meat rang out. Tang Jing cried out in pain, and actually felt a burning pain. Looking down, he discovered that the places where the black wave had touched had turned fiery red, and his skin was festering. This scene gave him a fright, and he immediately channeled his energy, trying to resist the black waves. However, the black wave was extremely ferocious, and was actually not afraid of Tang Jing's innate qi. Like a spark of fire, it instantly spread to more parts of Tang Jing's skin. On the other side, Song Jiangwang also jumped up. He did not care about Tang Jing at all, and quickly channeled his energy. A black light rose from his body, and the black waves gradually disappeared without a trace. It was obvious that his condition was much better than Tang Zheng's. What's going on? Tang Zheng looked at all of this in disbelief. Song Jianguang took a deep breath and sneered, the heavens are helping me. Do you think that the things in the 18 levels of hell are so simple? Not only is this black wave fatal to the members of the world of spirits and souls, but it is also absolutely lethal to you humans. Your skin will completely fester, and in the end, you will become a ghost. When that time comes, let's see how you can still be so arrogant. If Tang Zheng became a ghost and lost his physical body, his strength would definitely drop from the sky to the ground. When that time came, how could he be Song Jianguang's opponent? He did not expect that the stinky black wave would be so lethal, and his heart trembled. He did not think that Song Jianguang was lying to him. This was definitely true. Seeing his expression become so ugly, Song Jianguang was even more pleased, and said jokingly, "Don't waste your energy, your innate qi cannot resist the black wave. It is mixed with the most sinister yin qi in the world of spirits and souls, and its lethality is fatal." Tang Zheng coldly snorted, resisting the pain, and said, "I'm not scared. It's not that easy to take my life." Seeing that Song Jianguang could easily resist the black wave, he did not believe that he had no way at all. However, he did not know that this black wave was most effective against the real body of a person, and was even more effective than against a ghost. Suddenly, a voice sounded in Tang Zheng's ears, and it was like the sound of nature. The irritation in his heart immediately disappeared, and the pain in his body suddenly stopped. As for the injuries on his body, they were miraculously healed. Seeing this scene, not only Tang Zheng, but even Song Jianguang was dumbfounded. This was because Song Jianguang had never seen the Dizang of Goguryu's magic. The Dizang of Goguryeo had been in the 9 levels of hell for hundreds of years, and no one had ever seen him. Naturally, they did not understand his situation. Today, seeing him, Song Jianguang found that the Dizang of Goguryeo was even more unfathomable. He could not guess how deep the cultivation of the Dizang of Goguryeo was. "What kind of magic is this?" Song Jianguang asked. The Dizang of Goguryeo raised his eyes and lightly glanced at him, saying, "The Ksitigarbha Sutra. I have been here for hundreds of years, and it is a set of scriptures that I have comprehended. How does it feel? How does it feel? This feeling is very shocking, do you know?" Song Jianguang's heart was screaming. The Ksitigarbha Sutra is very effective against the ghosts here. I believe that before long, I will be able to make the underworld empty, and the 9 levels of hell will no longer exist. The Dizang of Goguryeo said confidently. Song Jianguang had never seen the Dizang of Goguryeo boast before. Since he said so, then he must be very confident. The Ksitigarbha Sutra could speed up the Dizang of Goguryo's conversion of the ghosts here. This set of scriptures was simply heaven-defying. From the fact that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was able to heal Tang Zheng's injuries with just a few simple lines of scripture, one could see how powerful he was. When Tang Zheng thought of the scriptures that the Dizang of Goguryo spoke of before, he was deeply shocked. He could not help but admire the Dizang of Goguryo. To be able to comprehend the great Tao and comprehend this kind of Ksitigarbha Sutra out of nothing, this was a true almighty ability. Although many people were powerful, they could only inherit and carry forward other people's cultivation methods. They could comprehend a new set of cultivation methods on their own. This was what made them powerful. The current Tang Zheng could not compare to them, but he was looking forward to it. If he could have such achievements one day, then his life would not have been in vain. The cultivation methods that he cultivated were very complicated. The ancient Clear Heaven Scroll and the Dragon God Secret Art were the foundation. The others, such as the 9 Revolutions Vajra Technique, the Heaven Swallowing Technique, the Heaven Flying Immortal Sword Art, and so on, were all learned from others. Therefore, he still had a very long way to go on the road of cultivation. Of course, not every cultivator or martial artist could have the opportunity and ability to create a first-rate cultivation method, but if they could do this, then they would be famous throughout the ages. Dizang of Goguryo, then it seems that I have to congratulate you. Song Jianguang said insincerely. Dizang of Goguryo's expression did not change. He was as motionless as a mountain, making Song Jianguang completely unable to guess his thoughts. Since the Dizong of Goguryeo had made his move, then should he fight or retreat? If he retreated, then his plan would be for naught. But if he continued to fight with the Dizong of Goguryeo, how could he have any chance of winning? Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound interrupted his thoughts. He saw a huge wave rise up in the pool. The pool water bubbled, and one after another, ghost faces appeared on the surface of the pool. What's going on? Song Jianguang shouted in shock. Dizong of Goguryeo's expression instantly became serious. Seeing his reaction, even Tang Zheng's head sank. After all, the Dizong of Goguryeo's expression did not change. He was neither sad nor happy. This change was definitely not a good thing. As expected, the Dizong of Goguryeo said in a deep voice, "You've been accumulating power for so many years. Are you finally going to come out?" Hearing this, Tang Zheng and Song Jianguang were both confused. Song Jianguang asked curiously, "Dizong of Goguryeo, just what is going on?" The seed that was planted back then is the fruit of today. This matter is also related to you. The Dizong of Goguryeo looked deeply at Song Jianguang and said meaningfully. Song Jianguang's brows furrowed. He still did not understand the meaning behind his words. He shouted angrily, "Don't be deliberately mystifying." The Dizong of Goguryeo did not answer him. Instead, he stared at the surface of the pool with a burning gaze. Boom, 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 loud sounds came from the bottom of the pool. It was like the sound of war drums that signaled the beginning of a war. It made people's hearts beat faster, and their blood seemed to be boiling. A burst of dense energy rose from the surface of the pool, and the air became more and more viscous, like glue. The Dizong of Goguryeo's expression became serious. He opened his mouth, and a passage of scriptures came out of his mouth. These scriptures turned into fist-sized golden Sanskrit words and flew to the surface of the pool. When these Sanskrit words appeared, the power of the Ksitigarbha Sutra increased greatly. It was many times more powerful than what they had seen before. Once the Sanskrit words came close, those writhing ghost faces immediately disappeared and were converted. Chapter 971. Looking at the turbulent pool, Tang Zheng and Song Jianguang's hearts were in their throats. Suddenly, with a loud sound, a monstrous black wave surged up. A huge creature rushed out of the pool. It was like a towering mountain, looking down at the three of them. This big guy was extremely ferocious and terrifying. Its huge head was a ferocious ghost face. Its two eyes were like blue flames that constantly jumped, and its big mouth was like a bottomless black hole, causing people to feel fear just by looking at it. "What is this?" Song Jianguang exclaimed. Dizong of Goguryeo said with a serious expression, "This is the cause you planted. Don't you recognize him?" Song Jianguang stared at the huge creature with suspicion. He frowned and said, "He is, the king of the underworld." If the other kings of hell heard the three words king of the underworld, they would definitely be shocked. This was because this name had disappeared for too long. No one mentioned it at all. However, they would not forget. This was because the king of the underworld was one of the 10 kings of hell who were as famous as them. He was the king of hell who was harmed by the yin qi of the 9 underworlds. Because of his death, Song Jianguang was able to ascend the throne. Therefore, how could Song Jianguang not have a deep impression of him? Although the king of the underworld's appearance had changed greatly, one could still vaguely see the outline of the king of the underworld. Therefore, Song Jianguang recognized him after looking carefully for a while. Because of this, he was indescribably shocked. This was because everyone thought that the king of the underworld was already dead. When he suddenly appeared at this time, no matter who it was, they would be shocked. However, it was obvious that Dizong of Goguryeo knew that the king of the underworld was not dead. That was why he said that karma. Tang Zheng did not recognize the king of the underworld, but when he saw the other party's appearance, he knew that the other party was not to be underestimated. However, seeing Song Jianguang's reaction, he was very interested to know what kind of unusual relationship there was between the two of them. "King of the underworld, so you're not dead," Song Jianguang said. The netherworld king glared at Song Jianguang and finally said, Song Jiang, so it was you. It was because of your plan that I ended up like this. Song Jiangwang's previous name was Song Jiang, and he was a subordinate of the Lord of the Underworld. He had planned for the Lord of the Underworld to become like this, so the Lord of the Underworld obviously did not have a good impression of him. The anger in his words was unmistakable. Song Jiangwang's eyelids twitched as he said, "Netherworld King, this is all a mistake. I never thought that you would become like this. If I had known, I definitely wouldn't have done this. Also, if I had known that you were still alive, I would have risked my life to come to the ninth hell to save you." The Lord of the Underworld laughed coldly. Who wants you to save me? My current condition is better than ever. Of course, if that bald donkey Dizong of Goguryeo wasn't around, I would be even better. He has suppressed me for so many years. Now that I have achieved great success, I can finally break through his shackles. After saying this, the Lord of the Underworld turned to look at the Dizong of Goguryeo and laughed eerily. The Kitagarbha Bodhisattva remained unfazed by the compliment and humiliation. He did not react in the slightest because of these words. However, Tang Zheng and Song Jiangwang were both shocked. It turned out that the Dizong of Goguryeo had been deliberately suppressing the Lord of the Underworld. As for why he would do this, Song Jiangwang thought for a moment and understood the reason behind it. This was because the Lord of the Underworld's temperament had undergone an earth-shattering change. He could not be controlled at all. If he was not suppressed and allowed to leave the ninth hell, the impact would be immeasurable. Since the Dizong of Goguryeo could not suppress the Lord of the Underworld, then how profound was his current cultivation? Moreover, he said that he had achieved great success in his divine technique. What kind of divine technique did he cultivate? Also, Song Jiangwang, don't think that I don't know about your wild ambitions. When you were under my command, I always knew that you wanted to replace me. Now that I am dead, I'm afraid that the throne of the King of Hell has also fallen into your hands. The Lord of the Underworld exposed the mystery with a single sentence. Song Jiangwang's expression changed slightly, but he could not stop complaining. Lord of the Underworld, you have really misunderstood me. I have always been loyal to you. How could I have such thoughts? Then are you one of the kings of hell now? The Lord of the Underworld asked directly. Song Jiangwang stammered and could not say anything. The Lord of the Underworld's eyes shone with a fierce light like flames. He roared, "So it is. I didn't guess wrongly. You are a wild and ambitious fellow. So what if you have become the king of hell? I will still take your life today." The tables had turned. No one had expected that the Lord of the Underworld would appear. Moreover, the Lord of the Underworld's anger towards Song Jiangwang was obviously very strong. This way, Song Jiangwang's situation was even worse. Song Jiangwang's expression finally changed drastically. His lies could no longer fool the Lord of the Underworld. This meant that he was attacked from both sides. Now, he should not be thinking about how to capture Tang Zheng, but how to escape with his life. He subconsciously took a step back, trying to activate the King of Hell's seal and leave the 18 levels of hell. However, under the watchful eyes of everyone, the feasibility of his plan was obviously too low. Even if he activated the King of Hell's seal, the others would have a way to stop him immediately. Trying to escape? The Lord of the Underworld's words blocked Song Jiangwang's escape path. He looked resentful. "I said that I would kill you, so I will definitely kill you." The Lord of the Underworld was very domineering. Song Jiangwang's expression kept changing. He suddenly had an idea. He suddenly turned to Dizong of Goguryeo and said, "Dizong of Goguryeo, you have always boasted that you want to purify the malicious spirits and evil spirits in the 9 levels of hell. Isn't the Lord of the Underworld one of the greatest examples? Are you going to watch him commit murder without doing anything?" Dizong of Goguryeo looked at Song Jiangwang indifferently and said, "Song Jiangwang, you are really cunning. You want me to save you again? Haven't you always boasted that you are merciful? Are you going to let the Lord of the Underworld do whatever he wants?" Song Jiangwang retorted. When Tang Zheng saw this, he quickly interrupted, "Song Jiangwang, you are a king of hell, but you use such a method to provoke him. Do you really think that the Dizong of Goguryeo will fall for your trick?" Tang Jing naturally did not want the Dizang of Goguryeo to fall for Song Jianguang's provocation. Otherwise, if he let him escape, the news of him coming to the world of spirits and souls would be made public. At that time, he would be surrounded by enemies, and his situation would be very bad. "Brat, who do you think you are? How dare you speak nonsense in front of me?" Song Jianguang was enraged. He did not wish for his chance to live to be ruined by Tang Jing. At the same time, his hatred for Tang Jing could be said to have seeped into his bones. He made up his mind, if he was unable to kill this brat this time, then he would definitely find a chance to kill him in the future. Seeing that both sides were at daggers drawn, the Dizang of Goguryeo finally interrupted. "Thank you for your reminder. I know Song Jianguang's intentions very well. He wants me to save him. Of course I know. He used this kind of provocation once before to trick me again. How could I not know?" Chapter 972. Since the Dizang of Goguryeo had already seen through Song Jianguang's intentions, he would definitely not fall for his trick again. Tang Jing relaxed. Just like Song Jianguang, he wanted to kill the other party. However, the Dizang of Goguryeo changed the topic and said something that shocked everyone. "I liberate all living beings, and all living beings are equal. Song Jianguang is naturally one of them, so I won't watch him die at the hands of the Netherworld King. Moreover, the Netherworld King is already very powerful. If he devours Song Jianguang, his power will definitely be turned upside down. When that happens, it will be even more difficult to restrain him." Haha. Song Jianguang laughed maniacally in his heart. The Kitagarbha Bodhisattva was actually still so inflexible. For the sake of his so-called beliefs, he was so stubborn and did not know how to be flexible. If that was the case, he would be able to keep his life. Tang Jing's expression changed slightly, and he sighed secretly. Looking at the Dizang of Goguryeo's resolute expression, he knew that it was useless to say anything more. He could not persuade him at all. The Netherworld King flew into a rage. "Dizang of Goguryeo, you've suppressed me for so many years, and I haven't settled the score with you yet, but you've taken the initiative to come knocking on my door. If that's the case, all of you must die today." After he finished speaking, his furious gaze swept across the few of them. Suddenly, his gaze fixed on the temperature of Tang Jing's body. He was slightly stunned, and then he was overjoyed. There's actually a living person. Strange. There's actually a living person in the world of spirits and souls. The taste must be very delicious. Tang Jing felt a chill. Indeed, none of the people in the 9 Serenities hell were normal. Even the Netherworld King wanted to eat him. He was not Tang Seng's meat. "Dizang of Goguryeo, you've been trying to liberate the vengeful spirits in the 9 Serenities hell, but you haven't really seen how powerful these vengeful spirits are. Today, I'll open your eyes." The king of the underworld let out a shrill cry that was sharp and ear-piercing. The hearts of the others shuddered as the cry quickly spread throughout the 18 levels of hell. Immediately, a series of sharp echoes came from the inner walls of the 18 levels of hell. The devilish sound entered one's ears and made one's heart tremble. "This isn't an echo." Tang Jing's expression changed greatly as he shouted. Smart. This is indeed not an echo. Haven't you always thought that the ghosts in the 9th level of hell are in a state of disunity? Let me tell you wrong. They are not in a state of disunity, they just lack a leader, and I am that leader now. Their explosive power will be beyond your imagination." As soon as he finished speaking, clouds of black gas emerged from the inner walls of the 18 levels of hell. In the end, they transformed into ghostly faces. Tang Jing took a closer look. It turned out that there were countless black holes on the inner walls. They were dark and dense, like a beehive. Just now, Tang Jing had not noticed this at all. At this moment, he looked particularly shocked. It was as if there were countless ghosts hidden in those black holes. They kept letting out sharp cries, and then the ghosts rushed out and circled above their heads. "This is..." Song Jianguang was dumbfounded. Dizang of Goguryeo sighed faintly and said, "If 10,000 ghosts are not suppressed, the ghost world will be in chaos." "The ghost world will be in chaos." Song Jianguang's shoulders trembled. He understood the seriousness of this sentence. Tang Jing, on the other hand, harbored evil intentions. If the ghost realm was in chaos, wouldn't that be beneficial to him? Dizong of Goguryeo glanced lightly at Tang Jing, as if he could see through his heart, and said, "If the ghost world is in chaos, the ghosts will not be able to reincarnate smoothly. It will do more harm than good to the human world." After hearing this, Tang Jing could not help but feel a bit ashamed. His thinking was too narrow, blinded by a single leaf. Of course, this did not waver Tang Jing's determination to absorb the ghost world's origin energy. The human world had to be restored to a large world. The human world had to be stronger than the ghost world, just like it had been many years ago. This was the most beneficial to the human world. Therefore, we should work together to suppress the king of the underworld. This is the best choice. Dizong of Goguryeo continued. Tang Jing moved his head and asked, "Are you really not a match for the king of the underworld?" Dizong of Goguryeo did not answer, but the king of the underworld answered first. "Since he could not suppress me and let me come into being, it means that my power has surpassed his. Now that he wants to stop me, he's dreaming." Dizong of Goguryeo did not deny it. This meant that the king of the underworld was not lying. This made Tang Jing and Song Jiangwang shocked. Especially since Song Jiangwang knew that Dizong of Goguryeo was an expert in the ghost world. Now that he was not a match for the king of the underworld, how could he not be shocked? "Regardless of whether I can defeat you, king of the underworld, as long as I'm here, I won't let you do as you please and harm the ghost world." Dizong of Goguryeo said calmly, neither sad nor happy. "Song Jiangwang, I'll let you live for a while. I'll get rid of Dizong of Goguryeo first, then I'll deal with you," the king of the underworld said aggressively. With a flash, he hovered in front of Dizong of Goguryeo. Dizong of Goguryeo sat in the pool. No matter how strong the waves around him were, they could not hurt him. He raised his head and looked at the king of the underworld lightly, saying, "King of the underworld, then let me see what kind of spell you've comprehended." "Underworld's ghost art," the king of the underworld said lightly. "What? You've really mastered the underworld's ghost art?" Song Jiangwang was shocked. He had heard of this spell before. Back when he was under the king of the underworld had mentioned this spell. This spell was a new spell that the king of the underworld had come up with. This spell was extremely vicious, and it required the user to devour countless ghosts for his own use. Back then, the king of the underworld was the king of hell. It was impossible for him to cultivate such a rebellious spell. Apart from Song Jiangwang, who was his confidant, very few people knew about it. If the king of the underworld had not mentioned it, Song Jiangwang would not have remembered it. Now, he immediately recalled the king of the underworld's description of this spell. He was flabbergasted and could not calm down for a long time. Looking at Song Jiangwang's shocked reaction, the lord of the underworld laughed and said, "You actually still remember this set of spells. I really didn't expect you to forget about running away now, didn't you?" Song Jiangwang's expression kept changing. He gritted his teeth and said, "King of the underworld, don't be too happy. Do you really think you can cover the sky with one hand? You're too confident. I'm no longer the Song Jiang from back then. The Dizong of Goguryeo has even comprehended the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Do you think we can't defeat you even if we work together?" At this critical moment of life and death, Song Jiangwang placed his hope of survival on the Dizong of Goguryeo. "You're still so stubborn even when you're about to die." The king of the underworld was furious. "From today onwards, I'll rule over the ghost world. Since you guys are so stubborn, I'll use you guys as a sacrifice to my underworld ghost art." The lord of the underworld clenched his fist, and the Een spirits and malicious ghosts in the air instantly charged toward them. There were over 10,000 Een spirits and malicious ghosts, and there were both ghost citizens, ghost messengers, ghost generals, ghost marshals, and even a few ghost kings. When they attacked together, the battle prowess they unleashed was extremely shocking and powerful. The three of them launched a counterattack at the same time, each with a different style. Tang Jing drew his bow and shot 3 arrows at the same time. They pierced through the ghosts at the front and skewered the ones at the back. The 3 arrows came from 3 different directions, forming 3 spectacular scenes. The shooting sun arrows were like skewers of candied haws. Even a ghost king could not escape the attack of the shooting sun arrows. The ghosts bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they struggled, trying to break free from the shooting sun arrows. However, the shooting sun arrows shone brightly. In an instant, a series of deafening explosions came from the shooting sun arrows. The ghosts exploded completely, turning into wisps of yin qi. At the same time, the King of Hell's seal in Song Jianguang's hand shone brightly, turning into thousands of black lights that enveloped the ghosts that were charging over. The ghosts immediately let out shrill cries as they melted into wisps of yin qi and were absorbed by the King of Hell's seal. The Dizang of Goguryu's method was the most simple. He casually drew a few complicated runes in the air in front of him. When the ghosts came into contact with the runes, they were immediately enveloped by the golden runes. They struggled non-stop, trying to break free from the runes' imprisonment. However, after a short while, they realized that all their efforts were in vain. Their struggles became slower and slower. In the end, their ferocious expressions became peaceful and peaceful. There was no trace of hostility left. With a flash of golden light, they soared into the sky and disappeared without a trace. They had been purified by the Dizang of Goguryo. The hostility in their bodies had been removed, and they had become normal ghosts. The three of them were very decisive in their attacks, and their power was not to be underestimated. When the Lord of the Underworld saw the ghosts disappear one by one, his expression did not change at all. Instead, there was a hint of mockery in the depths of his eyes. "Is that all?" the Lord of the Underworld asked. "Do you think that everything will be fine after killing those ghosts? Let me tell you, the most powerful thing about the Underworld ghost art is that it can continuously replenish reinforcements. Song Jianguang, you should be very clear about this." Song Jianguang's face was pale as he asked, "Are you really going to do this?" The Lord of the Underworld nodded without hesitation. "Of course. What is he going to do?" The Dizang of Goguryo had a bad premonition, so he quickly asked. All these years, he had secretly fought with the Lord of the Underworld countless times. He knew very well how powerful the Lord of the Underworld was, so he had never left the Lord of the Underworld's 18 levels of hell. If it were not for his suppression, the Lord of the Underworld would have broken out of the water long ago. He would not have waited until today. He's going to use the Underworld ghost art for real. Song Jianguang's voice was trembling slightly. "Ha!" The Lord of the Underworld laughed maniacally when he heard this. "The Underworld ghost art, all the ghosts in the world will be at my disposal. Transform." The Lord of the Underworld opened his mouth, and a thunderous voice came out of his throat. He threw his hand, and a black light rushed out of the 18 levels of hell. Even the ghostly labyrinth outside could not hide its power. Boom! A loud sound exploded in the sky. It was as if a hole had been pierced in the sky, and a black hole appeared in the sky without any warning. "This is the Lord of the Underworld's Yama seal," the Dizang of Goguryo exclaimed. Every Yama king had a Yama seal. When the Lord of the Underworld died, the Yama seal went missing. Everyone thought that it had been destroyed or lost. They did not expect it to still be in the hands of the Lord of the Underworld. This Yama seal was no doubt a divine artifact. It was very powerful. The Yama seal merged with the black hole, and the aura of heaven and earth changed drastically. Almost all the members of the ghost realm saw the strange phenomenon in the sky. Moreover, this strange phenomenon came from the 9th underworld. They were all guessing what had happened. Whoosh whoosh. A strong suction force rose from the ground. Many ghosts screamed and flew toward the black hole in the sky. These ghosts were not only ghost citizens, but also ghost servants, ghost generals, ghost marshals, and even ghost kings. They could not resist the black hole at all and were immediately sucked in. The ghost realm was in chaos. Chapter 973. This earth-shattering scene naturally did not escape the eyes of the kings of hell. When they saw their subordinates flying into the sky one by one and being sucked into the huge black hole, it was as if the end of the world had arrived, and each of them was facing a great enemy. At the same time, they also felt a huge suction force. If it were not for their profound cultivation, they would have been sucked into the black hole as well. What's going on? Roars echoed in the ghost realm, and each of the kings of hell was enraged. Come back! Each of them used their divine powers, and a terrifying aura filled the air, entangling their subordinates and citizens, trying to pull them back. Their cultivation was indeed profound, and many of their citizens were pulled back. Then, one by one, they hid in their houses, trembling, and did not dare to come out again. Whoosh, 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 figures rose into the sky one by one, and the 9 kings of hell flew to the sky above their respective cities. With a flash of light in their hands, the king of hell's seal flew into the sky one by one, turning into a huge shield. An invisible force covered their cities, protecting them. However, the protection of the king of hell's seal was limited, and the citizens outside the cities panicked, screaming as they flew into the black hole and disappeared. Infinity and the kings of hell looked at the black hole in the sky that swallowed everything in horror. Their heartstrings trembled, and their minds raced, trying to guess what was going on. They tried to use their divine sense to sense the black hole, but they found that once their divine sense entered, it was as if it would be swallowed into the endless abyss. This made them flinch, and they did not dare to probe recklessly. This situation had never happened in the ghost realm, and they were puzzled. The kings of hell resisted with difficulty, protecting their citizens. However, there was no king of hell in King Songjiang City, and its resistance was minimal. Many of its citizens were sucked into the black hole, and it was extremely miserable. Whoosh, 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 a gust of cold wind blew wildly in the 18 levels of hell, and ghosts appeared in the 18 levels of hell, replacing the ghosts that were defeated by the 3 of them. What's going on? Tang Zheng was shocked, and he subconsciously exclaimed. The appearance of these ghosts was too strange. They appeared in the 18 levels of hell without any warning. It was as if they had been transported here from somewhere. Song Jiangwang's face was pale. He understood the netherworld demonic arts better than the others, so he immediately explained, "This is the netherworld demonic arts. It absorbs the spirits outside the 9 serenities hell for its own use. These spirits are contaminated with the yin qi of the 9 serenities hell and have lost their original nature. They will be used by the netherworld king." I see. Tang Zheng suddenly understood. Suddenly, he locked onto a familiar face among the ghosts. This was a ghost general that he had seen in the city of the Chakravarti king. He was also attracted to this place. Song Jiangwang's thoughts were the most complicated. This was because he had already recognized many familiar faces among these ghosts. These were all his subordinates. On the other hand, the other King Yanluo's had far fewer citizens. He immediately understood that it was definitely because he wasn't in the city to defend against the attacks of the netherworld's ghostly arts. That was why the netherworld king was able to take advantage of this opportunity. However, he couldn't even protect himself now. He couldn't care less about these citizens. Dizeng of Goguryeo finally couldn't sit still anymore. He shouted, "Stop!" Suddenly, lotus flowers bloomed under his body and carried him toward the netherworld king. He put his palms together and chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Huge scriptures jumped out of his mouth and flew toward the netherworld king. These scriptures were extremely powerful. When they flew in front of the netherworld king, they suddenly enlarged and descended from the sky to suppress him. You still want to suppress me?" The netherworld king shouted in disdain. "Children, break his Ksitigarbha Sutra." Following his loud shout, the weather changed. All the ghosts self-destructed and turned into wisps of yin qi. Then, they gathered together to form a huge ghost claw. The golden scriptures were torn apart and couldn't get close to the netherworld king. The netherworld king laughed coldly. "This is the netherworld demonic claw of my netherworld demonic arts. Can your Ksitigarbha Sutra block it?" The netherworld demonic claw was a ghost claw formed by gathering all the ghosts. Countless ghosts had to be sacrificed to achieve this. The ghosts that disintegrated and turned into the ghost claw just now had all been sacrificed. This was an irreversible process. The nether ghost claw broke through the sutra and clawed at Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. The gigantic ghost claw was like a towering mountain, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. It locked onto Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva, leaving him with no place to hide. Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva didn't try to evade. Instead, he kept chanting the scriptures. A beam of golden light shot up into the sky from the top of his head and turned into a shining golden palm. Compared to the netherworld demonic claw, the palm was pathetically small. However, it blocked the netherworld demonic claw and prevented it from breaking through its defense. Merciful and merciful palm. A voice full of vicissitudes came from the Dzong of Goguryeo. This voice seemed to contain endless compassion, making people feel pity for him. The merciful and merciful palm and the netherworld demonic claw fought in midair. Brilliant lights flashed, and the golden and black colors reflected each other. Two completely different forces spread in all directions, leaving palm prints and claw marks on the inner walls of the 18 levels of hell. Mercy is the only way to deliver all living beings from torment. The Dzong of Goguryeo chanted the scriptures. The merciful and merciful palm shone brightly and gently hit the netherworld demonic claw again. With a loud bang, the merciful and merciful palm and the netherworld demonic claw disappeared at the same time. In this attack, both sides were evenly matched. No one gained the upper hand. The murderous intent in the netherworld king's eyes burned brighter. He said coldly, "I have the endless power of the world of spirits and souls at my disposal. Dzong of Goguryeo, what abilities do you have to contend with me? If I don't enter hell, who will?" The Dzong of Goguryeo still did not have an intense reaction. He just kept chanting the scriptures. Suddenly, the scriptures that came out of his mouth changed. They turned out to be golden lotuses. Mouth-dazzling lotus. This was an extremely profound spell. Every golden lotus emitted a terrifying power. They flew to the netherworld king's side and kept spinning, trying to suppress him. A mouth-dazzling lotus. I've only heard of it before, but I've finally seen it today. However, if you want to use this spell to suppress me, Dzong of Goguryeo, you've underestimated me. The netherworld king laughed maniacally. However, his smile suddenly disappeared. His expression was ferocious. He crossed his palms in front of his chest, and a string of black lightning suddenly appeared in his palms. Netherworld lightning. Tang Zheng and Song Jiangwang shouted at the same time. This netherworld lightning could harm the tree of life. Naturally, one could imagine how powerful it was. Tang Zheng did not expect the netherworld king to be able to use the netherworld lightning. Would the Dzong of Goguryeo be able to resist him now? Whoosh whoosh, ghosts continued to appear in the 18 levels of hell. They all self-destructed and merged into the netherworld king's body. The netherworld king's body became bigger and bigger. Suddenly, two black wings grew out of the netherworld king's back. They covered the sky and almost occupied most of the space in the 18 levels of hell. The netherworld king flapped his wings and flew up. A chilly wind blew. The lightning in his hands became thicker and thicker. Finally, it became as thick as a water bucket. With a shake of his wrist, he shouted, "Netherworld lightning." The netherworld lightning flew toward the Dzong of Goguryeo. Bang bang bang. The netherworld lightning whipped the golden lotus. Golden light bloomed. However, it did not last long. The golden lotus turned into wisps of golden light and dissipated. The Dzong of Goguryeo's expression changed slightly. He was shocked by the netherworld king's combat power. The netherworld lightning's power was obviously stronger than normal. At least, according to Tang Zheng's judgment, it was stronger than what he had seen before. With his cultivation level, it would be difficult for him to deal with the netherworld lightning. However, he was not in a hurry to make a move. This was because the Dzong of Goguryeo had not used his full strength. It was still unknown who would win. Song Jiangwang had always wanted to escape. However, after seeing the netherworld king's terrifying power, he forcefully suppressed this thought. There was no doubt that the netherworld king would discover him once he used his technique to escape. Even though the Lord of the Netherworld and the Ksitagarbha Bodhisattva were engaged in an intense battle right now, as if they had no time to care about anything else, Song Jiangwang believed that the Lord of the Netherworld would definitely react the moment he made a move. Song Jiangwang felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. He stared at the battle between the Dizong of Goguryeo and the Netherworld King without blinking. This earth-shattering battle shocked him deeply. Only now did he realize how insignificant he was. He was still trying to dominate the world of spirits and souls. With these two stumbling blocks, he would never succeed. The earth-shattering battle between the Dizong of Goguryeo and the Netherworld King caused the 18 levels of hell to tremble. The huge pit shook violently, and the surrounding walls collapsed rapidly. The pit grew bigger and bigger as if it was going to spread to the ends of the earth. It turned the vast world of spirits and souls into netherworld hell. The Dizong of Goguryeo's mouth-brilliant lotus could not block the netherworld lightning's attack. The Dizong of Goguryeo's aura had obviously weakened. This caused Tangjing and Song Jianguang's expressions to change at the same time. If the Dizong of Goguryeo really could not block the Netherworld King, the world of spirits and souls would definitely be destroyed. When that time came, not only the world of spirits and souls, but also the human world would be affected. Song Jianguang could sit by and do nothing, but Tang Zheng could not stand by and do nothing. However, he was obviously not the Netherworld King's opponent. His eyeballs kept rolling, and his brain was working quickly. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at the huge black hole formed by the Yama's seal in the sky. He had a flash of inspiration, and he secretly cheered, "I've got a way." Since the Netherworld King relies on absorbing the power of other ghosts in the world of spirits and souls to support himself, wouldn't it be a great success if I cut off his escape route? If Song Jianguang knew about this idea, he would definitely scoff at it. This was because it was easier said than done. Any ghost that approached the black hole in the sky would definitely be sucked in. How could he cut off the Netherworld King's escape route? Instead, he would become a part of increasing the Netherworld King's strength. Therefore, Song Jianguang could only watch and do nothing. He was like a fish on a chopping board. His life was in the hands of others, and he could not make a decision at all. Chapter 974. Tang Zheng flew into the sky. This scene shocked Dizong of Goguryeo and Song Jianguang. Dizong of Goguryeo subconsciously shouted, "Don't go." However, Tang Zheng did not hear his voice. Song Jianguang was slightly delighted. He thought to himself, this little guy must have been scared silly. He actually took the initiative to fly toward the black hole. Isn't he walking right into the trap? One had to know that the black hole was not only useful to the ghosts in the ghost world, but it was also very attractive to the souls of humans. Once one was sucked in, it would be very difficult to break free. The Netherworld King coldly glanced at Tang Zheng and sneered contemptuously. "Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish." With a thought, the suction force of the black hole created by the Yama's seal increased greatly. In an instant, a few muffled bangs were heard. The defenses above the Yama's cities in the ghost world collapsed. One by one, the residents of the ghost world quickly rose into the air and flew toward the black hole. The other kings of hell gritted their teeth and endured. Their faces were terrifyingly pale as they looked at the terrifying black hole in the sky. They had already discovered that the black hole had risen from the 18th level of hell. This meant that something must have happened in the 18th level of hell. Didn't Song Jianguang go to the 18th level of hell to meet Dizong of Goguryeo? Could it be that something had happened? Hundreds of thoughts ran through their minds. Their hearts trembled as they became more and more anxious. This was because there were too many unknowns in the 18th level of hell. However, they soon discovered a strange figure. In the sky, a figure actually rose into the air. This did not look like the ghosts that were sucked into the black hole. This figure was calm and composed. Even though they were far away, the kings of hell could see it clearly. Who is this? This thought appeared in their minds at the same time. As they were too far away, they could not sense Tang Zheng's powerful life force. Otherwise, they would have discovered that he was a living person and not a ghost. Not only the kings of hell, but almost all the residents of the ghost world looked up at the sky. Tang Zheng was as dazzling as the sun. No matter where he was in the world of spirits and souls, his figure could be seen. He attracted everyone's attention. Tang Zheng was in a daze. His eyes were filled with the unfathomable black hole. He had personally experienced the feeling of his soul being sucked out. He was overwhelmed with shock. He understood that this black hole had a fatal effect on the soul. However, at this moment he already had no choice, and he was utterly unable to escape. Moreover, fleeing would mean that the Netherworld King had his way, and the ghost realm would fall into the hands of the Netherworld King. This was only disadvantageous to him. You know how to attract souls. Do you think I can't? Tang Zheng snorted coldly and pushed his hands forward. A black hole appeared out of thin air, growing bigger and bigger. At the critical moment, he used the sky-swallowing technique. Immediately, 2 black holes appeared in the sky. Although the black hole created by the King Yanlua's seal was larger, the black hole created by the sky-devouring technique wasn't any weaker. The ghosts in the sky seemed to have been immobilized. They were suspended between the 2 black holes. The 2 black holes had a great attraction force. The 2 forces of attraction fought against each other, and the ghosts actually maintained a kind of balance. They could neither advance nor retreat. Ah! Exclamations sounded in the world of spirits and souls. This scene was too bizarre. Even the kings of hell could not do this. The kings of hell were shocked. Where did this master come from? The other party was clearly not the Dizong of Goguryeo. But when did the world of spirits and souls have such a master? Why did they not know? Questions quickly occupied their minds. No matter how hard they racked their brains, they could not figure out the reason and details. They could only be spectators. However, they also benefited a lot. Because the attraction force suddenly decreased, their bodies relaxed, and they hurriedly looked for shelter. The few cities whose defenses had been destroyed quickly reactivated their defenses to protect the cities they lived in. The ghosts were terrified. The residents of the world of spirits and souls were so frightened that they kept quiet. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. However, everyone's common focus was still on Tang Zheng. Because the black holes created by his sky-swallowing technique were too impressive. Its power was beyond everyone's expectations. This included the 10 kings of hell, and even the Dizong of Goguryeo and the king of the underworld. The king of the underworld's expression changed drastically. His originally ferocious face became even more terrifying, and the flames in his eyes were dancing non-stop. He was the most familiar with his netherworld ghostly art. Of course, he was also the most confident. He thought that none of the residents of the world of spirits and souls could break his netherworld ghostly art. However, the scene in front of him severely damaged his confidence. He almost suspected that this was all a dream. Of course, this was not a dream. It was absolutely real. The king of the underworld was also very clear about this, so the shock in his heart was especially intense. What's with the black holes he created? Is it also the netherworld ghostly art? The king of the underworld muttered to himself. However, he immediately denied this point of view. This was because he knew the netherworld ghostly art too well. One of the key factors behind the success of this art was the king of hell's seal. The king of hell's seal was connected to the 18 levels of hell. Therefore, using the king of hell's seal as a medium, he used the king of hell's seal to perform the netherworld ghostly art. When the ghosts were sucked into the black holes, the sinister and vicious yin qi in the king of hell's seal would take effect. It would seep into the ghosts and transform them so that they would obey the king of the underworld's orders. As for the ghosts being transported to the 18 levels of hell, this was also because the king of hell's seal was connected to the 18 levels of hell. That was why it had such a miraculous effect. Obviously, Tang Zheng did not have the king of hell's seal. Even though the king of the underworld was far away, he could tell that the black holes created by Tang Zheng were worlds apart from the black holes created by him. However, there was no doubt that both black holes had great effects on the ghosts. The king of the underworld had never seen this art before. Furthermore, he had looked down on Tang Zheng from the beginning. This human was too weak. He believed that he could kill him without even using a finger. However, at this moment, he realized how ridiculous his thoughts were. He was entangled by Dizong of Goguryeo and had no time to care about anything else. He could only watch as Tang Zheng confronted the black holes created by him in midair. Dizong of Goguryeo was extremely intelligent. He immediately realized the great significance of Tang Zheng's actions. He originally thought that Tang Zheng was doomed. He did not expect him to have a miraculous move that could dissolve the enormous demonic power of the netherworld ghostly art. He had a new understanding of the will of the heavenly axiom. This encounter was not only to save the human world, but also to save the world of spirits and souls. This was because even if Tang Jing did not come to the 18 levels of hell, the king of the underworld would still break out of the water at this moment. If no one restrained him, the king of the underworld's netherworld ghostly art would be unstoppable. Then, would the world of spirits and souls not fall? Therefore, the heavenly axiom's actions were aimed at saving the human world and the world of spirits and souls. Dizong of Goguryeo had not predicted this before. Seeing that the king of the underworld was trying to end the battle quickly so that he could attack Tang Jing, Dizong of Goguryeo would not let him succeed. He immediately launched an even more ferocious attack. A 7-colored light lit up under his body, completely covering the light of the golden lotus. In an instant, Dizong of Goguryeo's entire body was bathed in the 7-colored light. However, he did not appear frivolous. Instead, he appeared extremely solemn. Just one look was enough to make one's soul solemn. "The divine Prajna lotus," the king of the underworld exclaimed. After all, the king of the underworld was once the king of hell. He also knew a lot of information about Dizong of Goguryeo. The divine Prajna lotus was a supernatural power that Dizong of Goguryeo could only use when he cultivated his spells to the extreme. There were many different opinions about the power of the divine Prajna lotus, but without exception, it was extremely powerful. Legend had it that the divine Prajna lotus had a total of 90 to 80 petals to form a huge 7-colored lotus. When a cultivator sat within it, he would immediately become a Buddha. Could it be that Dizong of Goguryeo had become a Buddha? The king of the underworld and King Song Jiangwang had the same thought in their minds at the same time. Their expressions changed drastically. The king of the underworld's fearless and confident attitude was based on the fact that Dizong of Goguryeo had yet to become a Buddha. If he had really become a Buddha, then the king of the underworld would not be his opponent at all. Hell has yet to be emptied. It's impossible for Dizong of Goguryeo to become a Buddha, King Song Jiangwang mumbled to himself in shock. The spells that Dizong of Goguryeo cultivated placed great importance on promises. If he made a heavy oath, he definitely could not go back on it. Otherwise, he would face countless dangers and obstacles on his path of cultivation. This was something that any cultivator would be willing to see happen. This was why King Song Jiangwang was so confident that Dizong of Goguryeo had yet to become a Buddha. Suddenly, the king of the underworld's gaze was firmly attracted by the petals of the Prajna lotus. He was slightly stunned, but soon after he beamed with joy. He cried out in surprise, 36 petals. Dizong of Goguryeo, you haven't become a Buddha, nor have you cultivated the true Prajna lotus. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva said without sadness or joy, 9981 petals, symbolizing 9981 hardships. Now that I have experienced 36 hardships on the path of cultivation, I naturally have 30 petals. This is not the real Prajna Saint Lotus like you said, it is real. It is just that you have entered a misunderstanding. Haha, I don't care about your 81 difficulties or 36 difficulties. As long as you haven't truly become a Buddha, you're not my opponent. The king of the underworld was wild with joy. He roared and swung the netherworld lightning over. Wherever the netherworld lightning passed, the ghosts would be sucked into the lightning. Gradually, the lightning became thicker and thicker, as if it was about to fill up the hole in the 18 layers of hell. The ghosts in the 18 layers of hell were all sucked into the netherworld lightning in an instant. The lightning flickered like black pythons, flicking their tongues and emitting a terrifying aura. King Song Jiangwang retreated step by step until he reached the wall. There was nowhere for him to go, while the Dizong of Goguryeo and the king of the underworld were ready to attack. They had reached a critical point. King Song Jiangwang's heart skipped a beat. If he did not leave now, when would he leave? Times had changed. He believed that the king of the underworld would not be able to take care of him at this moment. As a result, he was prepared to take a gamble. Moreover, if he did not leave, the terrifying netherworld lightning might affect him as well. He would die either way, so it was obviously better to take a gamble. He quickly activated his Yama's seal, and with a flash of light, a black door appeared in front of him. His figure flashed, and he dove into the black door, rolling and crawling as he disappeared. In the next second, he appeared in his own city. Chapter 975. Every citizen of the Ghost Realm saw the magnificent scene clearly. They looked up at the sky and stared at the scene as if they were in a daze. Their hearts almost stopped beating at this moment. Many kings of hell had the urge to rush to the 18th level of hell to find out, but due to the black hole in the sky, they had no choice but to stop. Because they had to stay to protect their own people. But the curiosity in the depths of their hearts was aroused to the extreme. Tang Zheng also saw this scene. Although he was extremely shocked, he still restrained his thoughts and focused on dealing with the black hole in front of him. The ghosts were restrained by the two forces and couldn't move. Their eyes widened as they looked at the black hole in front of them in fear. Suddenly, Tang Zheng found that the suction force of the black hole created by Yama's seal had weakened a little. This change made him overjoyed. Originally, the two sides were in a stalemate, and the two black holes could not do anything to each other. But at this moment, the other black hole weakened, which gave Tang Zheng an opportunity. Before he could figure out the reason, he roared, "Absorb!" He quickly activated his vital energy, and in an instant, the power of the sky-swallowing technique increased greatly. Whoosh whoosh. The surrounding air was completely sucked into the black hole, and those ghosts also flew toward the black hole. Seeing that they were about to be sucked into another black hole, the ghosts struggled and screamed, but it was no use. At this moment, the power of the sky-swallowing technique overshadowed that of Yama's seal. The suction force of Yama's seal was reduced to the minimum. The black hole created by Yama's seal flew toward Tang Zheng. The sky seemed to collapse, forming a strange vacuum state. The other ghosts were desperate and looked helplessly at the black hole in front of them. The 10 kings of hell had no way to resist at all. They could only watch this scene. They thought that their people could escape, but they were too naive. Song Jiangwang's face was pale. Tang Zheng's skill and means were beyond his expectations, especially this move, which made his heart feel like it was about to jump out of his throat. He actually dared to boast shamelessly that he wanted to capture Tang Zheng. He was simply overestimating himself. Looking at the approaching ghosts and black holes, Tang Zheng did not have as many complicated thoughts as the others. At this moment, the only thought in his mind was to win. Of course, he would not learn from the Netherworld King's vicious methods. Seeing that the ghost was about to disappear into the black hole, he immediately stopped using the sky-swallowing technique. In an instant, the suction force stopped, and all the ghosts fell to the ground. After regaining their freedom, all of the ghosts danced in excitement and used all of their skills to escape as far as they could. Tang Zheng did not care about these ghosts at all. He flew toward the black hole. He guessed that the sudden decrease in the suction force of the black hole must have had something to do with the loud bang just now. Perhaps Dizong of Goguryeo had used some powerful attack to cause the Lord of the Underworld to lose control of the black hole. Therefore, he wanted to seize this rare opportunity to completely destroy this black hole and cut off the Nether King's path of retreat. Just as he approached the black hole, the suction force suddenly increased. In a moment of carelessness, he was immediately enveloped by a powerful suction force. Before he could react, his figure disappeared into the black hole. Ah! Cries of surprise echoed in the world of spirits and souls. Obviously, no one had expected this. They originally thought that Tang Zheng was going to win, but they did not expect that he would be sucked into the black hole as well. Song Jiangwang had mixed feelings. Without the suppression of this living person, wouldn't the nether ghost arts be invincible in this world? Then, even if he bitterly held on and resisted the suction force, there would be a time when he would be exhausted. However, on the other hand, Tang Zheng represented the human forces. Without him, the world of spirits and souls might be able to avoid the danger of being downgraded to a small world. All the residents of the world of spirits and souls trembled in fear and hid in their houses. Without this brave warrior to resist the black hole, would it not be difficult for them to escape the fate of being sucked into the black hole? Their faces were ashen, as if their souls were about to scatter. The 18 levels of hell were in a mess. The 18 levels of hell had completely collapsed, and the area had increased by dozens of times, turning into a huge ruin. This was the result of the battle between Dizong of Goguryeo and the Lord of the Underworld. Even the ghostly labyrinth at the periphery had disappeared, and the 18 levels of hell had completely merged with the 9th level of hell outside. Waves of ruthless Yin Qi drifted out, and the 9th level of hell spread out rapidly. The Yin Qi soared into the sky, and everywhere it passed, there was an aura of death. Even the sky above their heads became darker and darker. Dizong of Goguryeo and the Lord of the Underworld floated in midair, and there were traces of battle on their bodies. The 9th level of hell lightning had disappeared, and so did the Prajna lotus. Only the two of them were left. However, Dizong of Goguryeo stood up and simply floated in the air, confronting the Lord of the Underworld. However, at this moment, both of them looked at the sky at the same time and saw the scene of Tangjing being sucked into the black hole. Dizong of Goguryeo's expression changed abruptly. He was very clear about the power of the King of Hell's seal. Moreover, this was the King of Hell's seal that had been imbued with the Netherworld's demonic arts. Its power was even more incomparable. This person had been sucked into the King of Hell, and he was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. He had completely fallen into the Lord of the Underworld's control. Wouldn't the heavenly axiom's decree be unable to be carried out? He definitely couldn't let him die like this. Dizong of Goguryeo's expression became very resolute, and there was a strange look in his eyes for the first time. It was difficult for him to maintain his composure. He put his palms together and stared at the Lord of the Underworld without blinking. He was extremely fierce. The Lord of the Underworld laughed heartily. This brat is still no match for me. How can the Netherworld's demonic arts be so easily broken? I want to destroy his body and soul in the King of Hell's seal, and scatter his soul. I won't let you have your way. Dizong of Goguryeo shouted. He took a step forward and walked toward the Lord of the Underworld. Every time Dizong of Goguryeo's feet landed, ripples would undulate. At the same time, golden lotuses would appear and bloom under his feet. Lotuses with every step. This was another great divine ability. The Lord of the Underworld's expression changed slightly, and he said, Dizong of Goguryeo, who exactly is this person? Why do you want to save him even though you've mobilized so many people? Dizong of Goguryeo said coldly, the Vajra's glare. As soon as he finished speaking, golden halos appeared all over his body. He was like a golden man, like a Vajra. His angry eyes were wide open, causing those who looked at him to tremble in fear. The Vajra was an important divine ability among the divine arts that Dizong of Goguryeo cultivated. The Vajra's glare was a wake-up call. The Lord of the Underworld's expression darkened, and he snorted coldly. You're really determined to save that brat. I won't let you have your way. So what if the Vajra's glare is a glare? Azura descends, kill. The word kill contained boundless murderous intent. The aura of heaven and earth changed because of it. The Yin Qi in the hell of the 9 underworlds changed the way it spread. It gathered from all directions and completely condensed together. A bolt of 9 underworlds lightning flashed past, and a huge shadow appeared in the sky. The water in the pool kept boiling. It was like a water dragon rising into the sky and gathering in the huge shadow. In an instant, the shadow underwent an earth-shattering change. It gradually condensed into a physical body and rapidly shrunk to the size of a normal person. Azura descends, slaughter the world. The Lord of the Underworld roared. The Azura also let out a roar. This sound spread far and wide, even further than the Lord of the Underworld's voice. The entire world of spirits and souls heard it, and it was shaken. Just this sound alone almost scared some timid ghosts out of their wits. They all shrank into a corner, their faces pale and trembling. Azura! Dizong of Goguryeo looked at this thing that suddenly appeared in shock. The Azura was a legendary existence in the world of spirits and souls. It was said that he condensed the most ruthless Yin Qi in the world of spirits and souls. Moreover, it depended on fate. After so many years of legends, no one had seen the real Azura. Moreover, If anyone subdued the Asura, their power in the world of spirits and souls would increase greatly. They would become an existence that was not inferior to the 10 kings of hell. Even the 10 kings of hell could not compare. The Lord of the Underworld had the ability to make the Asura descend. It was obvious how high his cultivation was. Dizong of Goguryeo was not afraid. Instead, he became more determined. Whether it was the Lord of the Underworld or the Asura, they must be eliminated. Otherwise, the world of spirits and souls would really be plunged into misery and suffering. This was because the Asura's combat power was too strong. It only listened to its master's orders. It was a complete killing machine. Asura sword. The Lord of the Underworld roared again. The Asura's long hand reached forward and grabbed at the void. A bolt of 9 serenities lightning appeared out of thin air and quickly condensed into the shape of a sword. The Asura sword. It was refined from 9 serenities lightning. Its power was imaginable. Dizong of Goguryeo's eyes widened. His face was full of anger. He also roared, "Devil vanquishing staff." A golden light flashed in the air. A shining golden staff appeared in his hand. Lotuses bloomed under his feet. With the devil vanquishing staff in hand, he rushed toward the Asura. 9 serenities lightning danced in the Asura's eyes. With the Asura sword in hand, it roared and rose from the ground as if it was invincible. It descended from the sky and slashed toward Dizong of Goguryeo. When the sword landed, the world fell silent. Only this sword was left. Time and space seemed to have frozen. Other than this sword, there was nothing else in the world. What was a sword technique? This was a sword technique. It was extremely simple, but it was invincible. It was as if any obstacle would vanish under this sword. If an ordinary person faced this sword, they would have been killed by this aura before the sword landed. They would have been turned into ashes, and their souls would have been scattered. The water in the pool had dried up. Where the sword pointed, a crack appeared at the bottom of the pool. It grew bigger and bigger, like a natural ravine. Dizong of Goguryeo waved his devil-vanquishing staff. Golden light filled the sky. A golden staff shadow hit the Asura sword hard. Wherever the golden light passed, the world was dyed golden. It was solemn and was completely different from the gloomy environment around it. Chapter 976. The demon-vanquishing staff clashed with the Asura saber. The saber and the staff clashed. In an instant, the heavens and earth lost their color. These 2 weapons had undoubtedly become the center of attention. The shockwave was like an atomic bomb that could destroy the heavens and earth. Dust and gravel filled the sky and spread in all directions. Thick and high smoke and dust swept across the sky like a sandstorm, almost connecting the sky and the earth, covering the sun and the sky. It swept across the entire 9th Serenity Hell at a supersonic speed and quickly rolled toward the nearest city. Boom, boom, boom. Everywhere it passed, the villages turned into ruins and were swept up into the sky. Without the protection of the Yama's seal, the people of the world of spirits and souls had long been sucked into the black hole and became a dead village. At this moment, even the last trace of the village's existence had been wiped clean. The smoke and dust was invincible. Everything in its path was turned into nothingness. It slowly approached the nearest city. The Chakravarti king floated in midair and held the Yama's seal tightly. Rays of light fell and covered the huge Chakravarti city. It was like a huge protective shield that protected his city and his people. The people in the city were still in shock. What they had seen and heard today was something that they had never expected in their lives. They saw the black smoke and dust approaching from the horizon. One by one, they tried to escape but found that the protective shield of the Yama's seal not only protected them but also restricted their movements. No matter how hard they tried, they could not break out. The Chakravarti king's face was extremely gloomy. He roared, "Stop! Don't be impatient. What are you afraid of?" After hearing the reprimand of the city lord, the people gave up on escaping. However, they could not remain calm. They knelt down and kowtowed to the Chakravarti king, begging for his protection. The Chakravarti king continued to channel his powers as he gritted his teeth. He did not know what had caused this, But there was no doubt that something had happened in the 18 levels of hell that had caused this. He and his city had become the fish that had been caught in the crossfire. Not only was it for his people, but it was also for himself. He had to face it head-on and not run. If he ran away, his people would no longer exist. Then, as the king of hell, he would be all alone. What was the point of that? He took a deep breath and looked at the approaching smoke and dust. He secretly cheered himself on. Finally, the smoke and dust hit the protective shield. Boom! An earth-shattering boom rang out, and the protective shield began to tremble violently, emitting creaking sounds. The Chakravarti king's face turned pale in an instant. His arm that was holding onto the Yama's seal trembled uncontrollably as his veins bulged. He cried out sorrowfully in his heart. The ferocity of this attack was far beyond his expectations. Kacha! With a crisp sound, the light shield shattered into pieces. Smoke and dust swept across the towering city walls of Chakravarti city. The city walls collapsed and turned into ruins. Sharp screams sounded from within the city one after another. This smoke was fatal. Everywhere it passed, all creatures were turned into nothingness, their souls scattered. Groups of people from the ghost realm fled in all directions, trying to escape the pursuit. However, the speed of the smoke was much faster than them. It caught up to them in the blink of an eye, leaving them no place to hide. High up in the sky, the Chakravarti king could only watch helplessly as countless of his people died. This time, he was really going to be all alone. Seeing that the smoke and dust was right in front of him, he subconsciously swung the Yama's seal to counterattack. However, with a loud bang, the Yama's seal cracked. The Chakravarti king watched in disbelief as his magic treasure shattered into pieces. This was a heaven-grade magic treasure. How could it be so easily damaged? Just that blow alone had not only broken through the light shield, it had also caused irreversible damage to the Yama's seal. Once he channeled his inner power into the Yama's seal, it would die of old age. Although the Chakravarti king was heartbroken, his rationality prevailed when he saw the smoke and dust coming towards him. He could no longer care about his people. He transformed into a ray of light and fled into the distance like a stray dog. He flew tirelessly for a long time before he turned around to look behind him. He could no longer see Chakravarti city. It was completely shrouded in smoke and dust. Not a single person had escaped. Faced with the obstruction of this majestic city, the momentum of the smoke and dust gradually weakened. Finally, it dissipated as if it had never appeared. However, the raised Chakravarti city still showed traces of its existence. The Chakravarti king stopped and looked at his city from afar. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Who did he offend? Why did he have to suffer such an unexpected calamity? He looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. His voice was mixed with a myriad of emotions and reverberated throughout the world. However, no one cared about his gains and losses. Everyone was attracted by the 18 levels of hell and the black hole in the sky. After the black hole sucked Tang Jing away, it did not stop. Instead, it became even more unscrupulous and started to absorb the ghosts in the world. Some of the weaker kings of hell were struggling to hold on. They were on the verge of collapse, and the protective shield seemed like it would break at any time. In the world of spirits and souls, the cities of the kings of hell were far apart. Although everyone saw the smoke and dust in the sky, no one saw that Chakravarti city had been destroyed by the smoke and dust. Naturally, they could not feel the terrifying power of the smoke and dust. 18 levels of hell. Looking from afar, everything in the surroundings had collapsed. After the smoke and dust dissipated, only 3 figures were still standing on the ruins. Dizong of Goguryeo, the lord of the underworld, and Azura were dozens of meters away from each other. They stood in a triangular formation and faced each other from afar. The golden glow of the demon-vanquishing staff had dimmed significantly, and the aura of the Azura saber had also weakened. The impact of the collision between the two parties was earth-shattering. This was something that even Dizong of Goguryeo did not expect. This was a battle between experts. Every single move could practically destroy the heavens and the earth. This battle also caused another effect. And that was the complete disappearance of the vengeful spirits and malicious spirits in the 9 serenities hell. They were completely wiped out. This effect was even more immediate than when Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had enlightened them. However, these spirits had their souls scattered, which was naturally more effective than when Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had enlightened them. Dizang of Goguryeo felt that it was a pity. He had a compassionate heart, but he could not control everything. The result today was a variable that was beyond his control. Vajra's glare, severe warning? That's all there is to it. Dizang of Goguryeo, you are a joke. Now that Azura and I are here, and we have the netherworld ghost arts, who in the world of spirits and souls can stop us? Is it you? Can you do it? The Lord of the Underworld laughed wildly and proudly. The anger on Dizang of Goguryeo's face gradually disappeared. It was replaced by grief. A pair of eyes full of pity looked in all directions. The 9th level of hell had been destroyed. It had truly become a land of death. Other than the 3 of them, there was not even a single spirit left. Dizang of Goguryeo let out a long sigh. He put his palms together and recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra loudly. Scriptures flew out from his mouth and danced around him at high speed. They were like butterflies flying through flowers. The Lord of the Underworld looked at this scene with disdain. He sneered and said, "You are about to die, and you are still trying to be mysterious. I want to see what other tricks you have." Dizang of Goguryeo finished reciting the entire Ksitigarbha Sutra. The scriptures no longer danced in the air. Instead, they landed on his body. His entire body was shining with golden light. All the scriptures intertwined and actually formed a kasaya. It was dazzling and looked dignified. He sat down cross-legged. A huge 7-colored prajna lotus bloomed under him and lifted him up. The prajna lotus bloomed slowly. One petal after another kept on blooming. When it reached the 36th petal, it did not stop. The petals continued to bloom rapidly as if there was no end to it. The Lord of the Underworld was suddenly stunned. His expression changed slightly. The prajna lotus that Dizang of Goguryeo transformed into clearly only had 36 petals. How did it suddenly become so many petals? How many petals were there? 40, 41, 42. It was still blooming. Could it be that he had to reach the peak state of the prajna lotus when he had 81 petals? No, how was this possible? How could he do all this in such a short time? It was absolutely impossible. If hell is not empty, I swear I will not become a Buddha. If hell is empty, I will become a Buddha immediately. These words were like pearls. They were recited by Dizang of Goguryeo and reverberated above the desolate ruins. The Lord of the Underworld's divine soul trembled. He had never heard these words before. This was because when Dizang of Goguryeo swore this heavy oath, he had already been infected by the yin qi of the 9 underworlds. He had sunk to the bottom of the 18 levels of hell. Now that he heard these words, he suddenly had a bad premonition. He stared at Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva without blinking. Suddenly, he saw Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva put on the golden kasaya and bathed in the sacred golden light. The vanquishing devil staff in his hand lit up with scriptures, and the prajna divine lotus kept blooming its petals until it stopped at the 56th petal. The power of the 56 petals prajna lotus was much stronger than when it only had 36 petals. Every petal of the prajna lotus symbolized a calamity that the practitioner would encounter in the process of cultivation. From 36 petals to 56 petals, Dizang of Goguryeo had experienced 20 calamities. These calamities were in the heart and not in the external form. Therefore, these 20 tribulations were what he had experienced during this short exchange of blows. Although the prajna lotus hadn't reached its peak state, it didn't affect Dizang of Goguryeo from becoming a Buddha. With his cultivation and temperament, he had already met the conditions to become a Buddha. However, because he swore a heavy oath and hell wasn't empty, he couldn't break through this barrier. Now, due to a freak combination of factors, the battle between Dizang of Goguryeo and Azura affected a wide area. Everything in hell had disappeared, and hell had collapsed. Hell had become empty, so his oath was broken. When hell was empty, he would become a Buddha on the spot. Therefore, all of this happened naturally. There was no need for Dizong of Goguryeo to make any preparations. He recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra and turned it into a kasaya. When the kasaya was attached to his body, he would become a Buddha on the spot. Buddha was the final form of his divine power, so he had almost reached the peak of his cultivation. However, he hadn't experienced enough calamities. The Prajna lotus only had 56 petals, so he hadn't truly reached the peak of Buddha. Chapter 977. Dizong of Goguryeo wore a kasaya and looked solemn. He raised his eyes and looked at Shura and the Lord of the Underworld quietly. Shura did not have his own consciousness and was not afraid at all. However, the Lord of the Underworld was shocked. This was just a look, but it was completely different from before. The Lord of the Underworld quickly channeled his energy and roared, "Dizong of Goguryeo, so what if you've become a Buddha? Shura and I will kill you if we work together." Kill. The word kill emitted a strong murderous aura and soared into the sky. The Lord of the Underworld and Shura moved at the same time and attacked Dizong of Goguryeo. The Shura saber lit up again and swept over with an unparalleled murderous aura. Dizong of Goguryeo sat on the Prajna lotus and raised his arm gently. He waved the demon-vanquishing wand from top to bottom, and a golden light flashed past. The sky seemed to be covered by the golden light, and the Yin Chi retreated wherever the golden light passed. Bang! The demon-vanquishing wand hit the Shura saber. The Shura saber pressed down and hit Shura's shoulder directly. A stream of blood-like liquid flowed down from his shoulder. Shura let out a heart-wrenching roar and tried to break free from the Shura saber. However, he realized that the Shura saber was pressed down on his shoulder by the demon-vanquishing wand. He could not lift it at all. The Lord of the Underworld was shocked when he saw this, and his expression changed. The Dizong of Goguryeo, who had become a Buddha, was beyond his expectations. He was so strong. "Kill!" The Lord of the Underworld roared and waved his hand. The Yama seal in the sky flew down and returned to the Lord of the Underworld's hand. The black hole disappeared, and the people of the ghost realm felt relieved. "Go!" A voice came from the Lord of the Underworld's throat, and the Yama seal attacked Dizong of Goguryeo directly. From top to bottom, the force was extremely strong. Dizong of Goguryeo did not even look at it. He waved the demon-vanquishing wand casually. When the staff imprints collided, there was no strong shockwave. Everything was as calm as the surface of an ancient well without ripples. Everything was still. After a long time, bang! The Yama's seal flew back and collided with the Lord of the Underworld. The Lord of the Underworld's tall body immediately became bent. Like a kite with a broken string, he was carried away by this force and flew far away. The combat prowess of a first-stage Mahayana realm cultivator was truly shocking. He directly crushed the Shura and the Lord of the Underworld. The Lord of the Underworld would never have dreamed that after hell was emptied, it would bring such a drastic change to the Dizong of Goguryeo. At this moment, the Lord of the Underworld was filled with regret. The King of the Underworld flew for a long distance before he finally came to a stop. He realized that his own Yama's seal had almost created a huge hole in his chest. Before he could heal his injuries, he saw Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva hitting Ajura's shoulder tirelessly with his staff again and again. At first, the Ajura could still take it head-on, but he didn't have the strength to fight back. In the end, the Shura's strong legs were finally unable to withstand the continuous attacks. Thump! He knelt on the ground, and the ground trembled. The Lord of the Underworld's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when the Shura knelt. The Lord of the Underworld's heart was filled with despair and desolation. At this point, he understood that his accumulation of power this time had failed. After Dizong of Goguryeo became a Buddha, he was no match for him at all. If he continued to delay, he would probably end up with his soul destroyed. He made a prompt decision and prepared to escape while Dizong of Goguryeo was dealing with the Shura. He looked at the Shura unwillingly and prepared to turn around and leave. Suddenly, the Yama's seal trembled violently. What was going on? Before the first wave subsided, another wave rose. He hurriedly entered the Yama's seal with his divine sense. In an instant, he was stunned as if he had seen the most unbelievable thing in the world. After Tang Zheng was sucked into the Yama seal, his soul didn't dissipate. He discovered that he had entered an empty space. This space was similar to a sumeru pouch, but it was bigger. However, it still couldn't be compared to a storage dharma treasure like the sumeru world. In this empty space, he couldn't find a way to escape, so he could only wander around. Suddenly, an earth-shattering power came from all directions, as if it wanted to crush his soul into pieces. He was shocked, but he didn't panic. He made a prompt decision and used the sky-swallowing technique. A black hole miraculously appeared in front of him. He was overjoyed that he could use the sky-swallowing technique smoothly in this space. This space contained an extremely tyrannical amount of yin qi. As soon as the black hole appeared, the yin qi poured in like a flood breaking through a dam. In an instant, the yin qi decreased rapidly, and even the space became unstable. The pressure on Tang Zheng was greatly reduced. He had no other choice. Seeing that this method was very effective, he continued to use the sky-swallowing technique to absorb the yin qi without stopping. As time passed, the king of the netherworld's attention was completely attracted by Dizong of Goguryeo. He didn't have time to care about what was happening in the Yama's seal. Finally, the balance of the yin qi in the Yama's seal was broken. The Yama's seal was the most powerful dharma treasure of the kings of hell. The yin qi was the most important. When the balance of the yin qi was broken, the Yama's seal's power decreased sharply. The Yama's seal seemed to be in danger of shattering, so it started to tremble violently. The Netherworld King just so happened to see this scene. When his divine sense extended in and was prepared to investigate, he shockingly discovered that Tang Zheng was safe and sound. What made him even more terrified was that the Yama's seal was in imminent danger. "What did you do?" The king of the netherworld's angry questioning voice rang out in the Yama's seal. Tang Zheng raised his head and looked around. He said casually, "You sucked me in and wanted to kill me. Of course, I wanted to save my life. Why can you damage my Yama's seal?" The Yama's seal was the key to the netherworld's ghostly art. Without the Yama's seal, his netherworld's ghostly art was like a castle in the air. It looked good, but he couldn't use it at all. The Yama's seal's power had decreased a lot, so his netherworld's ghostly art would be greatly affected. Tang Zheng laughed coldly. "So what if your Yama's seal is strong? I have the sky-swallowing technique to restrain you. You can continue to lock me up. I'm not in a hurry. However, your Yama's seal will definitely turn into scrap metal in the end." Tang Zheng gradually figured out from the king of the netherworld's reaction that the sky-swallowing technique not only had a special restraining effect on ghosts, but also had a miraculous effect on the Yama's seal. This made him overjoyed. The second half of the sky-swallowing technique that he found in the Langya Pavilion was really a priceless treasure. If it wasn't for the powerful effect of the sky-swallowing technique, his trip to the ghost realm would have been doomed. The king of the netherworld was angry and anxious. He hurriedly used his divine ability in an attempt to kill Tang Zheng and make his soul scatter. Endless yin qi attacked Tang Zheng. Once the yin qi invaded his body, his soul would definitely be destroyed. However, Tang Zheng was not afraid in the slightest. He only activated the swallowing heavens technique step by step, and that mighty yin qi was actually unable to get close to him at all. It was completely sucked in by the black hole in front of him. As a result, the more yin qi the king of the netherworld mobilized, the greater the damage to the Yama's seal. This was completely unexpected to the king of the netherworld. The king of the netherworld let out a deafening roar. This was clearly bullying. Although Tang Zheng's cultivation was worlds apart from the king of the netherworlds, he had the sky-swallowing technique, a unique divine ability that defied the natural order. He could dominate the world with one move, and it actually made the king of the netherworld feel helpless. The king of the netherworld was really going crazy. He watched helplessly as the quality of the Yama's seal fell from a sage artifact to a heaven-grade artifact. His heart was bleeding. "I won't let you have your way." The king of the netherworld roared crazily. With a thought, Tang Zheng was expelled from the Yama's seal. With a flash of light, Tang Zheng found himself back in the ghost realm. He did not run away. Instead, he took advantage of the situation and pounced forward. Since the Yama's seal could not hurt him, he might as well strike while the iron was hot. He wanted to see if there could be further developments. Whoosh whoosh. The sky-swallowing technique still had a unique effect. The black hole was aimed at the Yama's seal, and the ferocious suction force firmly enveloped the Yama's seal. What are you doing now? The king of the netherworld widened his eyes in horror as he watched the Yama's seal slowly approaching the black hole. No matter how he activated the Yama's seal, it could not completely get rid of the suction force. How can this be? The king of the netherworld originally thought that everything would be fine once he released Tang Zheng. He did not expect the situation to become worse. The suction force of the black hole firmly locked onto the Yama's seal, and he could not do anything. He could not help but think of the ghosts that were sucked away by his netherworld ghostly technique. Everything seemed to be predestined. This was karma. I don't believe that I can't suppress you with my skills. The king of the netherworld gave up on the Yama's seal and attacked Tang Zheng directly. With a wave of his hand, a huge palm slammed toward Tang Zheng's head. Tang Zheng did not have time to look around. He could only watch as the king of the netherworld's palm slammed down. Moreover, he really did not have much ability to resist the king of the netherworld's attack. Stop! The Dizang of Goguryeo saw this from afar and shouted in shock. The demon-vanquishing staff turned into a golden light and flew over, hitting the huge palm hard. Bang! The king of the netherworld's palm broke and turned into wisps of yin qi. In the blink of an eye, they were sucked away by the black hole. No! The king of the netherworld roared in pain and staggered backward. He hugged his broken arm and bared his teeth, glaring at the Dizang of Goguryeo who was flying over. Dizang of Goguryeo, I'm going to kill you. The king of the netherworld roared like a madman. King of the netherworld, are you still so stubborn? The Dizang of Goguryeo sighed faintly and asked, Put away your bewitching words. Why would I, the king of the netherworld, listen to your bewitching words? The king of the netherworld was furious. Sigh, if that's the case, then go with the wind and return peace to the world of spirits and souls. The Dizang of Goguryeo said, It's not that easy to kill me. The king of the netherworld roared. While the two of them were facing each other, Tang Zheng activated the sky-swallowing technique. The suction force of the black hole increased greatly. With a flash of light, the Yama's seal disappeared and was sucked into the black hole. No! The king of the netherworld screamed and quickly turned his head, but he realized that it was too late. Chapter 978. The black hole trembled violently, and a huge change was taking place. Tang Zheng realized something, and he hurriedly activated the sky-swallowing technique. Waves of strange energy reverberated around the black hole. What have you done? The Lord of the Underworld was furious. Give me back my Yama's seal. Now that the Yama's seal had disappeared, his underworld ghost technique had completely lost its effect. This drastic move had caused him to fall into a hopeless situation. How could he not be furious? He did not care about his injuries, nor did he care about the Dizang of Goguryeo, who was glaring at him from the side. His face was extremely ferocious, and his body flashed with a black light. In the next second, he appeared in front of Tang Zheng and grabbed Tang Zheng's body with all his might, wanting to cut him into pieces. It seemed that this was the only way he could vent the anger in his heart. Tang Zheng's mind was completely focused on the sky-swallowing technique. Moreover, the Lord of the Underworld was too fast, and he could not dodge at all. He could only watch as the Lord of the Underworld grabbed him. Give me back my Yama's seal. The Lord of the Underworld roared at the top of his lungs as he tore at Tang Zheng with all his might. The immense pain made Tang Zheng frown, and he instinctively grabbed the Lord of the Underworld. Boom! The black hole in midair let out a loud explosion, and the airflow in all directions flowed toward it. The suction force was more than a few times stronger than before, and the aura of heaven and earth changed. The sky-swallowing technique was automatically activated under Tang Zheng's body. 2 more suction forces were generated from Tang Zheng's palms, and they firmly locked onto the Lord of the Underworld. The Lord of the Underworld's power flowed into Tang Zheng's palms like a flood. The Lord of the Underworld's cultivation was extremely terrifying, and he was equivalent to a 9th stage soul formation cultivator. Therefore, his power was simply too great. Although it happened in an instant, a lot of power flowed into Tang Zheng's body. This was the effect of the 2nd stage of the sky swallowing technique. Tang Zheng rarely used this ability because the power he absorbed was ultimately an external power. Although it could temporarily increase his cultivation, it was not a long-term solution. However, at that moment, in order to save his life, he couldn't care less. Since he could absorb the Netherworld King's power, he would not let go of this rare opportunity. Absorption. Tang Zheng's eyes were as bright as the stars as he frantically absorbed the King of the Underworld's power. At that moment, he was like a balloon, and the King of the Underworld's power was like hydrogen gas, filling Tang Zheng's 8 extraordinary meridians and internal organs with this power. However, he still didn't dare to stop for even a moment. In an instant, the Underworld King's cultivation actually dropped by 1 stage, becoming the 8th stage of the Divine Transformation realm. This caused the King of the Netherworld to almost go crazy. Not only had his magic treasure been taken away, even the power that he had painstakingly cultivated had been sucked away. Was there any justice in this world? He really had a feeling of speechlessness and was asking the heavens, "Get out of my way." The King of the Netherworld roared and surged all the power in his body. A majestic force directly shook off Tang Zheng's palms. If it was an ordinary cultivator, they would not be able to break free from Tang Zheng's sky-swallowing technique. However, the King of the Netherworld risked his life and finally shook off Tang Zheng with this attack. The King of the Netherworld hurriedly retreated, not even caring about the Yama seal. Even in his dreams, he had never thought that this insignificant human would have such a divine ability. He had never heard of it before, and it made him tremble with fear. This did not mean that Tang Zheng was very powerful. The most important thing was that the King of the Netherworld took the initiative to grab onto Tang Zheng in a moment of desperation. Tang Zheng had been constantly using the sky-swallowing technique, so naturally, his power was sucked away. This was mainly because of the strange effect of the sky-swallowing technique. It was not that Tang Zheng's cultivation could really hurt the King of the Netherworld. The King of the Netherworld was not aware of this. He was gradually frightened by Tang Zheng's mystical methods until his heart trembled. When Dizong of Goguryeo saw this scene, he had mixed feelings and was very glad. The person chosen by the heavenly axiom was indeed not an ordinary person. His cultivation seemed to be weak, but he had unexpected divine abilities. Even the King of the Netherworld was at a disadvantage because of a moment of carelessness. However, Dizong of Goguryeo would not give the King of the Netherworld another chance to attack. In a flash, he stood in front of Tang Zheng to protect him. Without saying a word, he directly struck the King of the Netherworld with the Devil Vanquishing Staff. The King of the Netherworld raised his only arm to block, but with a bang his only arm also exploded. The Devil Vanquishing Staff landed on his head. Golden light shone brightly and completely enveloped him. Roar! The King of the Netherworld kept roaring and struggling, but it was to no avail. The golden light became brighter and brighter, seeping into every part of his body. Sweet light smoke rose from the King of the Netherworld's body. The King of the Netherworld was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Suddenly, streaks of golden scriptures flew out from the Devil Vanquishing Staff and covered the King of the Netherworld's body. The golden light reached an extremely bright and dazzling point. Boom! With a loud explosion, the King of the Netherworld exploded and disappeared without a trace. The golden light disappeared, and everything returned to normal. The King of the Netherworld had been scheming and secretly accumulating for so many years. However, he failed at the last moment. He was still defeated by Dizong of Goguryeo. Because of this, the Dizong of Goguryeo became a Buddha earlier. Dizong of Goguryeo put his palms together and chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. His solemn voice reverberated in the surroundings, and everything returned to normal. However, a furious roar broke the silence. The Asura actually stood up again. Without the King of the Netherworld's control, The Azura was on the verge of going berserk. Any living being within his field of vision would become his target. Now, he was a killing machine. Therefore, although Shura had suffered a lot at the hands of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, and both of his shoulders were almost broken, he still rushed over without fear of death, ruthlessly slashing the Shura saber at Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Dizang of Goguryeo looked at the Azura and said, "The king of the netherworld is dead. Then you can go with him." He waved the devil-vanquishing staff. This time, it hit the Azura's head directly. Half of his head was almost flattened, but he still did not die. Instead, he kept roaring at the Dizang of Goguryeo and bared his teeth. The golden light firmly wrapped around the Azura, but the Azura did not stop struggling. After a while, the Azura did not explode like the king of the netherworld and disappear into thin air. The Azura has an immortal body? Dizang of Goguryeo's expression changed slightly. Only then did he realize how terrifying the Azura was. The Azura's combat power was definitely not as strong as the Dizang of Goguryeo. However, the Dizang of Goguryeo could not kill the Azura. This was equivalent to the Azura having an immortal body. This was something that the Dizang of Goguryeo had never thought of. Even the legends of the Azura did not mention this point. The Azura was an existence that was more powerful than the legends. If he was not controlled and continued to kill, the world of spirits and souls would probably be wiped out by him in the end. Dizang of Goguryeo's expression was solemn. His mind was full of thoughts. Suddenly, he muttered to himself, "If that's the case, then I'll keep you. However, your ferocious nature is hard to tame. I'll give you the Vajra devil-vanquishing staff." Dizang of Goguryeo pointed at the Azura, and a golden halo flew out from his fingertip. The Azura kept struggling, but he was firmly locked in by the golden light of the devil-vanquishing staff. All his resistance was futile. The golden halo flew to the top of the Azura's head and steadily landed on the top of the Azura's head. The golden light shone and turned into a golden halo, fusing seamlessly with the top of the Azura's head. Dizang of Goguryeo put away the devil-vanquishing staff. The Azura was freed and immediately counterattacked, fiercely attacking the Dizang of Goguryeo. Dizang of Goguryeo did not dodge at all. Instead, he looked at the Azura with interest. Seeing that the Azura saber was about to fall on the top of the Dizang of Goguryeo's head, he was still as firm as a rock. His lips moved, and between his opening and closing, the Ksitigarbha Sutra flowed out of his mouth like a trickle of water. The Azura saber stopped on the top of the Dizang of Goguryeo's head. Seeing that it was about to cut through the smooth top of the head, it strangely stopped and could not fall any further. The flames in the Azura's eyes calmed down bit by bit. The violent aura around his body decreased by a lot. He was like a statue, not moving at all. After finishing the Ksitigarbha Sutra, the Dizang of Goguryeo stopped. The Azura was also completely silent. Dizang of Goguryeo stared at the Azura and said, "The diamond devil-vanquishing ring is extremely powerful. After accumulating it for a long time, it will definitely be able to eliminate the violent aura in your heart." The diamond devil-vanquishing ring was a magic treasure. It had to be used in conjunction with the Ksitigarbha Sutra to display its true power. It was best for suppressing evil spirits. Since the Azura could not be killed, then Dizang of Goguryeo would use the diamond devil-vanquishing ring to suppress him. Every time he chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra, the diamond devil-vanquishing ring would display its power and suppress the violent aura in the Azura's heart, allowing him to return to calmness. However, there was a time limit to this. Once the time limit was over, the Azura would return to his original nature. However, Dizang of Goguryeo believed in the power of the Ksitigarbha Sutra and the diamond devil-vanquishing ring. He believed that dripping water could penetrate stone. After temporarily suppressing the Azura, Dizang of Goguryeo turned to look at Tangjing. He discovered that the black hole in the air had disappeared at some point. Everything had returned to normal. A strange look appeared in Dizang of Goguryeo's eyes. It was not because of the black hole that had disappeared, but because of Tangjing's cultivation. His cultivation had actually advanced by leaps and bounds. With Dizang of Goguryeo's strength, it was not difficult for him to discern Tangjing's cultivation. Originally, he was only at the first rank of the Yuaning realm, but now he had advanced to the fourth rank of the Yuaning realm. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation had advanced by 3 ranks. This speed was simply terrifying. It was not inferior to Dizong of Goguryu's instant ascension. Dizong of Goguryu's heart skipped a beat. He immediately recalled the scene from before. Tang Zheng had used some unknown method to absorb the power of the Lord of the Underworld. Furthermore, he had been demoted to the 8th rank of the Divine Transformation Realm. Although he had only been demoted from the 9th rank of the Divine Transformation Realm to the 8th rank of the Divine Transformation Realm, the difference of 1 rank was already shocking enough. Therefore, it seemed reasonable that Tang Zheng had absorbed so much power and advanced by 3 ranks. In the end, this kind of shortcut is not very beneficial to cultivation. I still have to advise him to take it 1 step at a time. Steadily and surely, this is the correct path of cultivation. Dizong of Goguryu's fiery golden eyes were not fooled by the alluring appearance of the sky-swallowing technique. Instead, he was able to see the drawbacks of it at a glance. However, this is also his opportunity. Others would not be able to obtain this kind of opportunity even if they wanted to. It's just that it's better to use this method less often. Dizong of Goguryo was not a stubborn person. He did not completely reject the sky-swallowing technique. Dizong of Goguryo looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. He saw that Tang Zheng's eyes were tightly shut. It was obvious that he had yet to recover from his cultivation advancement. Dizong of Goguryo did not disturb him. He only quietly watched as a spectator. Suddenly, Chapter 979. Dizong of Goguryo's expression changed drastically because he saw a strange phenomenon on Tang Zheng's face. Black lines snaked up from his neck like little earthworms. They crawled all the way to his cheeks and to the top of his head, making his face look somewhat sinister. This is the ruthless aura of the Lord of the Underworld's power. Dizong of Goguryo's fiery golden eyes immediately recognized it. Tang Zheng absorbed the Lord of the Underworld's power. Not only did he absorb the essence, but he also absorbed the dregs. The Lord of the Underworld lost his nature because he was infected by the ruthless aura of the Yin Qi in the 18 levels of hell. This ruthless aura was transmitted to Tang Zheng, so he might also lose his nature. Dizong of Goguryo was shocked. If Tang Zheng lost his nature, wouldn't the Heavenly Tao's decree be useless? Of course, he couldn't sit by and do nothing. He shouted loudly, and when the Buddhist voice entered his ears, it was as if he was enlightened. Tang Zheng's body shook, and he opened his eyes. His eyes flickered with a black aura. Obviously, he was already affected. Tang Zheng, listen to me carefully. You absorbed the Lord of the Underworld's power, and you also took the dregs. If you don't control them, you will lose your nature and become a person like the Lord of the Underworld, who willfully kills the innocent. I will now teach you the Ksitigarbha Sutra. The Ksitigarbha Sutra can suppress this ruthless aura, Dizong of Goguryo said in a deep voice. The Ksitigarbha Sutra. Tang Zheng was shocked. His current situation was indeed not good. His power had risen by 3 levels, but the side effects that came with it were torturous. He realized that he had been too naive. The Lord of the Underworld's power was not that easy to absorb. Just as he was at a loss, Dizong of Goguryo's actions were really timely, and it greatly improved his impression of him. Dizong of Goguryo was not only benevolent, but also generous to help him. He remembered this friendship in his heart. He did not stand on ceremony and immediately nodded to express his thanks. Dizong of Goguryo immediately imparted the Ksitigarbha Sutra to him. He recited a sutra that turned into huge golden Sanskrit characters that flew above Tang Zheng's head. With a flash of golden light, they entered his brain and were deeply imprinted in his mind. Tang Zheng suddenly found that there was an ancient scripture in his mind. Although every word of the scripture was in Sanskrit, he could understand the profound great Tao in it without any difficulty. Subconsciously, he began to chant. Although no golden Sanskrit words flew out of his mouth, the black aura in his eyes gradually dissipated, and his eyes returned to normal. The Ksitigarbha Sutra can help you subdue demons and devils. You need to recite it every day, and you will definitely have a deeper understanding of it, Dizang of Goguryeo advised. Tangjing had seen the power of the Ksitigarbha Sutra and knew that this was an extremely powerful technique. He sincerely bowed to Dizang of Goguryeo to express his gratitude. Dizang of Goguryeo slightly nodded and said with gratification, "Your comprehension is excellent. I believe that the Ksitigarbha Sutra will be of great use in your hands." After a pause, Dizang of Goguryeo suddenly asked, "What was that technique you used before? It could actually resist the Netherworld King's Netherworld Ghost technique?" Tangjing answered truthfully, "This technique is called the Sky Swallowing Technique. I obtained it by accident. Just now, I absorbed the Yamas seal, and the Yamas seal merged with the Sky Swallowing Technique, greatly increasing the power of the Sky Swallowing Technique." This was a situation that Tangjing did not expect. After the Yamas seal was sucked into the black hole, it did not disappear without a trace like other things. It actually merged with the black hole. This made Tangjing very surprised. It was precisely because of this that his sky-swallowing technique actually leaped, crossing the soul-devouring stage and entering the mountain-moving realm. The so-called mountain-moving realm meant that the sky-swallowing technique was enough to move a large mountain. The attraction of the sky-swallowing technique had increased by many times. However, this power was too great. He had no way to test it and really move a large mountain. Dizang of Goguryeo nodded and said, "This is your opportunity. The Yama seal is the keepsake of the great Yama kings. It is also very important to the ghost realm. Your sky-swallowing technique merged with the Yama seal. Perhaps there will be unexpected changes in the future." Unexpected changes? Tangjing opened his eyes wide. Even though Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's understanding of the swallowing the heavens technique was limited, he had fiery eyes of truth. Tang Zhenghao did not doubt his judgment, so when he heard these words, his curiosity was piqued. As for what changes it will be, you will have to slowly experience it yourself in the future. However, I still have a question that has been lingering in my heart. If I don't ask, I will not be able to let it go. Dizang of Goguryeo said again. You are clearly a living person. How can you appear in the ghost realm safe and sound and not be affected by the yin qi? The Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was probably not the only one who had this question. Song Jiangwang and even the Netherworld King, who had vanished into thin air, also had this question because this was too illogical. Because I have the 9 yang saint body. I am not affected by the yin qi. Tangjing still did not hide it. He had a natural trust in Dizang of Goguryeo. He felt that the other party would not harm him. This kind of trust was mysterious and he could not explain it in a short period of time. 9 yang saint body? Dizang of Goguryeo softly muttered these 4 words. I once inadvertently heard of this body. It seems to be a very rare body in the human world. I never thought that I would be able to see it with my own eyes. It is fortunate. After all, the ghost realm and the human world were separated by yin and yang. The human world did not know much about the ghost realm, and the ghost realm knew very little about the human world. Very few people in the human world had heard of the 9 yang saint body. Dizang of Goguryeo had actually heard of this body. This was enough to show that he was very knowledgeable. Perhaps this is the reason why the heavens chose you. You are a 1 in a million candidate. Other than you, no one else can come to the ghost realm. It is even more impossible for them to do such an earth-shattering feat, Dizang of Goguryeo sincerely praised. Hearing this, Tangjing could not help but blush with shame. He quickly said that he was ashamed. Don't be modest. If it was not for you, perhaps the situation would be completely different. In short, the ghost realm owes you a favor. Dizang of Goguryeo solemnly said. Tangjing's heart moved. Since the Dizang of Goguryeo owed him a favor, then could he discuss this mission with him? However, this mission was to protect the Tree of Life. Absorbing the ghost realm's source of energy was a matter that harmed the ghost realm. He did not know how the Dizang of Goguryeo would react. However, when he recalled what he had said about karma, Tangjing felt a bit more confident. If it was really according to his karma, then wouldn't it be the ghost realm that took it from the human world? Returning it now was a matter of course. Dizang of Goguryeo faintly glanced at him. Seeing that he did not speak, he guessed his thoughts and said, I already have a general understanding of the purpose of your trip. You have done a favor for the ghost realm, so I will make the decision for you. Tang Zheng was ecstatic. He did not expect the Dizang of Goguryeo to be so broad-minded. But suddenly, the Dizang of Goguryeo changed the topic. You also need to understand that the ghost realm and the human world are two interdependent worlds. The annihilation and disappearance of one is a fatal blow to the other. So, although the human world can be upgraded to a big world, it can't be drained and let the ghost realm cut off its vitality. Previously, Tang Zheng listened to the Dizang of Goguryeo's explanation and was enlightened. He understood the importance of the two worlds to each other. If the ghost realm disappeared completely, then the ghosts of human beings would have no place to go after death. They would become wandering ghosts in the human world, and there would be no new human reincarnation. In time, human beings would also perish. In the end, the human world could not escape the danger of extinction. Tang Zheng was not a ruthless person. After understanding the stakes, of course, he would not stubbornly want to absorb the source energy of the ghost realm. He nodded in understanding and solemnly promised, Dizang of Goguryeo, please rest assured. I am not an unreasonable person. As long as the human world is restored to a big world, then everything in the past will be forgotten. In fact, after witnessing the strength of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, he gradually understood the strength of the world of spirits and souls. If he persisted in his foolish ways and the two worlds fought each other, it was hard to say who would emerge victorious in the end. Since the Dizang of Goguryeo was willing to uphold justice, this was the most favorable situation for him. The Dizang of Goguryeo nodded with relief. I passed on the Ksitigarbha Sutra to you. Perhaps, this is the true purpose of the will of the heavenly Tao. I have a premonition that you will go very far. Thank you for the compliment. For this sentence, Tang Zheng did not feel much. Who knew what would happen in the future? The key was to do everything in front of him well. Roar. Suddenly, a roar interrupted the conversation between the two. The Shura woke up again and was extremely violent. The Dizang of Goguryeo was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he said to Tang Zheng, I put the Vajra demon subduing ring on the Shura. You can recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra without any distractions. See what effect it has? Tang Zheng was quiet in his own world and did not see the scene where the Dizang of Goguryeo dealt with the Shura. Seeing the Shura was so violent and directly rushing towards him, he quickly restrained the panic in his heart. According to the Dizang of Goguryeo's words, he calmed himself down and recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra without any distractions. There were still no golden Sanskrit words flying out of his mouth, but a clear voice floated out and flew to the Shura's side. The Shura's movements suddenly froze, but he did not stop immediately. He only slowed down his pace. The Shura blade fell from the sky and slashed towards Tang Zheng's head. Tang Zheng saw the blade, but he still did not dodge. Since the Dizang of Goguryeo asked him to focus, then he could not be distracted and continued to recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra. The Shura's movements became slower and slower, but the Shura blade hanging above his head was still very scary. If it was someone else, they would have been scared and hurriedly dodged. However, Tang Zheng was as steady as a rock. This made the Dizang of Goguryeo secretly nod in his heart, secretly praising Tang Zheng's courage. He actually believed his words without any doubt. At that time, the Dizang of Goguryeo was even more fond of Tang Zheng, feeling that he was his fated person. If it were not for him, he was afraid that he would not have become a Buddha so quickly, and the crisis in the world of spirits and souls would not have been solved so smoothly. The Shura blade stopped, almost touching Tang Zheng's hair. Chapter 980. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He raised his head and stared at the Shura who had calmed down. He was surprised. The Ksitigarbha Sutra actually had such a miraculous effect. Dizang of Goguryeo looked at him approvingly and explained, the Ksitigarbha Sutra and the Vajra demon subduing ring complement each other. When their effects are superimposed, they can play a huge role in suppressing the Shura and calming him down. Tang Jing secretly nodded and stared at the Shura who was close at hand. The Shura was no different from an ordinary person. However, instead of eyeballs, there were 2 balls of lightning in his eyes. They were as black as ink and kept jumping. Could it be that every time the Shura goes crazy in the future, I have to chant the Ksitigarbha Sutra to suppress him? Tang Jing asked curiously. Dizang of Goguryeo nodded. At present, the Shura's strength is very strong and the ruthlessness in his heart is too strong. Therefore, in a very short time, he will break through the imprisonment of the Ksitigarbha Sutra and the Vajra demon's subduing ring. We have to be on guard against him at all times. Once we discover that he shows signs of recovery, we have to chant the Ksitigarbha Sutra to suppress him. Tang Jing suddenly understood and sighed. This is really a troublesome matter. How is it troublesome to save the world? Dizang of Goguryeo said indifferently. Hearing this, Tang Jing felt ashamed and gave a thumbs up. Admirable. Suddenly, Dizang of Goguryeo had an idea. Why don't I keep the Shura by your side and you can convert him at all times? This is also a good thing. What do you think? Keep the Shura by my side? Tang Jing was shocked. This matter was really beyond his expectations. Compared to the Shura, the difference between his cultivation and the Shura was like heaven and earth. Wasn't this nonsense? Dizang of Goguryeo's expression was calm as he looked at Tang Jing without blinking. He was actually serious. Dizang of Goguryeo's action had a deep meaning. This was because once Azura was by Tang Jing's side, he would have to chant the Ksitigarbha Sutra to Azura from time to time to suppress him. In time, Tang Jing's understanding of the Ksitigarbha Sutra would definitely be extraordinary. Dizang of Goguryeo had great confidence in the Ksitigarbha Sutra that he had comprehended. He believed that once Tang Jing recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra every day and felt the profound dharma in it, then Tang Jing would definitely be like him, becoming a compassionate person who would help others. This was the quality that Dizang of Goguryeo valued the most. Therefore, he had really put in a lot of effort for Tang Jing. Tang Jing didn't know the reason, but he was shocked by Dizang of Goguryeo's suggestion. He asked blankly, Dizang of Goguryeo, the Shura's strength is too strong. If you keep him by my side, isn't it like keeping a tiger or wolf by a sheep's side? He was really too afraid of the Shura. This guy was a killing machine. If one day he couldn't suppress the Shura, then wouldn't he be in danger of being cut into pieces by the Shura? Dizang of Goguryeo laughed and explained, You don't have to worry. The Ksitigarbha Sutra has an undeniable effect on the Shura. Once you become more proficient in the Ksitigarbha Sutra, it will become easier to suppress him. You succeeded the first time, so it's impossible for you to fail in the future. You don't have to be afraid. Seeing Dizang of Goguryeo make such a solemn vow, Tang Jing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is this really necessary? Dizang of Goguryeo nodded. I have too many things to do next, so it's impossible for me to take care of him all the time. If I'm careless, it'll be too bad for him to be seriously affected. Tang Jing, do you think I have the time? Looking at the statue-like Shura in front of him, Tang Jing couldn't refuse, so he simply made up his mind. Since you want to give him to me, if I keep refusing, wouldn't I become a joke? Okay, I promise you I'll keep him. However, to be on the safe side, I can't keep him alive by my side. I'll put him into Sumeru world. Tang Jing compromised. Dizang of Goguryeo didn't care. As long as Tang Jing kept him, then he had to suppress him. Naturally, he would need to recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra often. Over time, Tang Jing's familiarity and recognition of the Ksitigarbha Sutra would be extraordinary. Dizang of Goguryeo revealed an unfathomable smile as if relieved of a heavy burden. Do as you wish, as long as you keep him. Tang Jing waved his hand, and a ball of light burst out from his wrist. The Shura disappeared and was put into Sumeru world. Good magic treasure. Dizang of Goguryeo praised sincerely. A magic treasure that could store the Shura was definitely not simple. It was definitely a heaven-grade magic treasure. Tang Jing seemed to be an ordinary person, but in fact, he had many unexpected magical powers and magic treasures. Although you've taken the Shura, you have to remember my advice. If you don't suppress him in time, then he may break through your storage magic treasure. At that time, you won't be able to guard against it. Dizang of Goguryeo instructed. Understood, please rest assured. Once the Shura makes the slightest move, I'll use the Ksitigarbha Sutra to suppress him. I won't let him harm the world. Tang Zheng patted his chest confidently. Dizang of Goguryeo nodded with gratification. His eyes looked into the distance and said, "This battle is huge. I'm afraid that after the ghost world was affected, it's already in chaos. Let's go out first." Since Dizang of Goguryeo made the decision, then Tang Zheng didn't have to worry about the other kings of hell. He didn't have to worry about the lords of hell agreeing. Dizang of Goguryeo's steps were like lotuses. Every step he took seemed to be a step, but the distance was very far. His speed was extremely fast. Tang Zheng stepped on the War Soul Sword and flew with the Imperial Sword. He and Dizang of Goguryeo flew into the distance. Looking down from the sky, the 9 Serenities Hell seemed to have experienced a nuclear explosion. It was a mess. Dizang of Goguryeo suddenly sighed faintly. Although the 9 Serenities Hell no longer exists, the price we paid this time is quite high. Without destruction, there can be no construction. You don't have to care too much about it. Tang Zheng advised. All of this is the cycle of cause and effect. Dizang of Goguryeo shook his head. If the ghost world didn't absorb the origin energy of the human world, there wouldn't be the 18 levels of hell. The 9 Serenities Hell would still be a paradise suitable for cultivation. Naturally, there wouldn't be this scene now. Tang Zheng sighed inwardly. Perhaps the 10 kings of hell never dreamed that there would be such a day. This might really be the cycle of cause and effect. Hey, look over there. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's eyes widened in surprise as he pointed at the ruins below. Chakra City. Dizang of Goguryeo glanced and blurted out. Tang Zheng frowned. The last time he came to the ghost world, the first city he arrived at was Chakra City. It was from here that he arrived at Fengdu City through the teleportation array. Looking at the ruins now, he couldn't help but sigh. It's a sin, a sin. Dizang of Goguryeo put his palms together and lowered his head. He chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. One by one, the Sanskrit scriptures flew towards the ruins to expiate the souls of the dead. Wherever they passed, it became peaceful. Countless souls were sacrificed in Chakra City. All of this was indirectly related to Dizang of Goguryeo. One could imagine how heavy his heart was. Since Chakra City has been destroyed, let's go directly to Fengdu City. Dizang of Goguryeo finished expiating the souls of the dead. The ghost world is vast. If we fly like this, we don't know how long it will take to reach Fengdu City. Tang Zheng was worried. Dizang of Goguryeo smiled. Of course we will go to Fengdu City through the teleportation array. Teleportation array? Tang Zheng lowered his head and looked at the ruins below. He couldn't see the original appearance at all. The teleportation array was long gone. How could it be teleported to Fengdu City? The teleportation array has been destroyed. Most of the teleportation array has been destroyed, but it can be rearranged. Ksitigarbha waved his arm downwards, and the originally scattered ruins began to move. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere, revealing the huge square floor. The ruins in all directions were actually combined together by a strange force. After a while, Tang Zheng discovered that there was a square below. It was exactly the same as the teleportation array square he saw before. The ruins were gone. Realization dawned upon him, and he realized that he had been too foolish to have thought of this. However, when he saw this teleportation array, he became excited. If he knew this kind of teleportation array, he could easily come and go as he wished if he could set up a teleportation array between the mainland and the island in the future. Wouldn't that solve many of his problems? The family was happy and harmonious. This was definitely a good thing for his grandfather. At this point, he no longer cared about being reserved and asked directly, Dizang of Goguryeo, may I ask if you can teach me the method of setting up the teleportation array? Of course, this is not a difficult spell. With your talent, you can learn it in a short time. Dizang of Goguryeo explained the various methods of setting up the teleportation array to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng memorized each and every one of them and compared them to the teleportation array below. Soon he understood most of it. Let's go. Dizong of Goguryeo activated the teleportation array. With a flash of light he disappeared. After they disappeared, the Chakravarti king flew over from afar. He was stunned and muttered to himself, Dizong of Goguryeo has left the 9 serenities hell and reappeared in the world of spirits and souls. He subconsciously recalled Dizong of Goguryeo's demeanor and methods. To his despair, he realized that Dizong of Goguryeo's skills had improved by leaps and bounds. The world of spirits and souls will no longer have peace. Humph, I am now a loner. The other kings of hell must be waiting to see me make a fool of myself. Now that Dizong of Goguryeo has reappeared in the world of spirits and souls, let's see if they still have the time to laugh at me. He could not help but feel lucky. If it was not for Dizong of Goguryeo, he would have been the target of ridicule for a long time. The Chakravarti king thought about it and recalled the person beside Dizong of Goguryeo. Strange, this was a living person. He had seen a living person before, but that person had fallen into the river Styx and his soul had long dissipated. However, the Chakravarti king still remembered the magical equipment used by that person, especially that set of bow and arrows. The king of hell had only obtained 1 arrow and kept it like a treasure. No one could take a second look at it. The Chakravarti king wished that he could have such a magical equipment. That way, his combat power would definitely soar. Why would Dizong of Goguryeo be with a living person? There must be something fishy. The Chakravarti king's eyes turned solemn. He squinted his eyes like a sly old fox. They must have left in such a hurry. Something big must have happened. If I don't catch up with them, wouldn't it be a huge loss? Chapter 981. In Fengdu City, the teleportation array suddenly lit up. With a flash, 2 figures appeared out of thin air, Tang Zheng and Dizong of Goguryeo. 97 The 2 of them did not disguise themselves. When they appeared, they immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding ghost messengers. They shouted, "Who are you?" Tang Zheng's life force was too strong. They were attracted by him at first glance. Dizong of Goguryeo's aura was even more unforgettable. In short, this combination was too eye-catching. They were immediately surrounded by a large number of ghost messengers. The 2 of them did not take their hostility seriously. Dizong of Goguryeo said casually, "Take me to see King Yama." "How dare you? Is King Yama someone you can meet just because you want to?" The ghost messengers shouted. They did not know Dizong of Goguryeo. Dizong of Goguryeo was not angry. He looked at Tang Zheng and said calmly, "Let's go there ourselves." Tang Zheng nodded and agreed. He and Dizong of Goguryeo walked out. The ghost messengers shouted angrily. But to the 2 of them, these angry shouts were like the crying of a baby. They were not threatening at all. A majestic force quietly spread out from Dizong of Goguryeo. The ghost messengers retreated to both sides like the tide. They watched as the 2 of them walked past them and strode toward King Yama's hall. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. But it caused an uproar among the ghost messengers. The news of the intruders spread like wildfire. King Yama had just returned to his palace. Before he could sit down, he heard a subordinate report that there were intruders. He stood up in shock. This was too much. They actually dared to cause trouble in his territory. Did they not put him, the Lord of the Ghost Realm, in their eyes? However, he was also a little anxious. Who could the intruders be? Could it be guests from the 9 Serenities Hell? The 9 Serenities Hell erupted with such a huge battle. Who exactly was fighting whom? One question after another jumped around in the Yama King's heart, giving him a headache. All of a sudden, a commotion rang out from outside the palace. The Yama King's heart trembled. He understood that the intruders must have barged in. So many of his guards actually failed to stop them. Only after they barged into the palace did they cause such a huge commotion. From this, one could see how powerful these intruders were. He walked to the door and happened to meet 2 intruders. Instantly, their eyes met. King Yunluo's eyes narrowed as he exclaimed, "Dizong of Goguryeo, why are you here?" Dizong of Goguryeo clasped his hands together. King Yenluo, we meet again after so many years. How did you leave the 9 Serenities Hell? Didn't you make a heavy oath? Dizong of Goguryeo asked in shock. Until hell is empty, I vow not to become a Buddha. Now that hell is empty, I naturally came out. Hell is empty? How is that possible? King Yenluo was very clear about the situation in the 9 Serenities Hell. There were as many vengeful spirits as there were hairs on an ox. How could they be completely converted so quickly? King Yenluo didn't believe it at all. He coldly snorted, Dizong of Goguryeo, you went back on your words and violated the oath you made. Seeing King Yenluo being so aggressive, Tang Jing couldn't help but interject. King Yenluo, on what basis are you accusing Dizong of Goguryeo of going back on his words? Let me tell you, he is telling the truth. In the ghost realm, except for Dizong of Goguryeo and the other kings of hell, no one dared to speak to King Yenluo like this. King Yenluo raised his thick eyebrows and flew into a rage. Who are you? How dare you shout in front of me? Suddenly, King Yenluo saw Tang Jing clearly and was shocked. You are a human. How did another human come out of the ghost realm? He had truly become a frightened bird. Back then, that human had caused him to lose a lot of face and caused a storm. That was why he had such a big reaction to the appearance of a living person in the ghost realm. King Yenluo, don't you remember me? We meet again. With Dizong of Goguryeo by his side, Tang Jing directly revealed his identity. King Yenluo was stunned for a moment. He stared straight at Tang Jing, then suddenly reacted and shouted, It's you. It's actually you. You didn't die? How is this possible? You fell into the river Styx? How could you not die? This time, King Yenluo was truly frightened, because this had completely overturned his worldview. Even if he fell into the river Styx himself, he wouldn't be able to survive. This living person was actually able to escape from death. He could no longer find the words to describe it. You know each other? Dizong of Goguryeo asked curiously. Not long ago, I met King Yenluo once. I left one of my magic treasures with him. I believe King Yenluo should have kept it. Now, it should be returned to its rightful owner. Tang Jing revealed his identity in order to retrieve the shooting sun arrow that he had lost. Once he retrieved the shooting sun arrow, he would have collected 9 shooting sun arrows, which could be considered as fulfilling one of his wishes. King Yenluo's heart tightened and said, Nonsense, why would I want your thing? It must have been lost in some corner long ago. In fact, King Yenluo had already studied the shooting sun arrow and understood that it was a rare magic treasure. He had always kept it in his heart. How could he return it to its rightful owner? Seeing his intense reaction, Tang Jing was instead certain that the shooting sun arrow must be in his hands, so he said, King Yenluo, as the head of the 10 kings of hell, your lying ability is not very good, far worse than King Songjiang. You have met King Songjiang? Yes, King Songjiang went to the 9 Serenities Hell, so he must have met you. Is he plotting some scheme again? King Yenluo asked as if he was facing a great enemy. I don't know what King Songjiang is thinking. I only want my shooting sun arrow back. What if I don't give it to you? Since his thoughts were seen through, King Yenluo no longer denied it and instead arrogantly asked. Back then, he was able to force Tang Jing to jump into the river Styx, so he was still confident that he could deal with him now. Moreover, he wouldn't let him escape so easily. Tang Jing didn't say anything, but Dizong of Goguryeo had already taken the initiative. King Yenluo, you are the head of the 10 kings of hell. What is the meaning of bullying a junior? King Yenluo's heart trembled and said, Dizong of Goguryeo, could it be that you want to stand up for him? He is a human. So what if he is a human? All living beings are equal. Dizong of Goguryeo, this is Fengdu City, the Yama Palace. If you want to stand up for a human, aren't you looking down on my Fengdu City too much? King Yenluo suppressed his anger and berated. Dizong of Goguryeo was unmoved and said indifferently, what we want is not just a magic treasure. This time, we specially came to find you for the Tree of Life. Tree of Life? You actually want to become enemies with the entire ghost realm for a human? King Yenluo came to a realization and immediately flew into a rage. The cycle of karma. What you took from the human world back then, it is time to return today. Nonsense, there is no reason to return something that has fallen into my hands. Is that so? Since that is the case, then we can only take it ourselves. Dizong of Goguryeo was very clear that Tang Jing was not a match for King Yenluo, so he took the initiative to attack. The subduing devil staff flashed and struck towards King Yenluo. King Yenluo roared and took out the Yama seal. With a bang, King Yenluo flew back and crashed into the wall of the main hall, leaving a dent in the wall. King Yenluo, don't be stubborn. Dizong of Goguryeo advised. King Yenluo's heart beat wildly. In these years, his strength had improved a lot, but he was not a match for the Dizong of Goguryeo. However, he was not prepared to admit defeat. With a roar, the Yama seal expanded and broke through the main hall. Like a mountain, it pressed towards the Dizong of Goguryeo. Dizong of Goguryeo shook his head. Stubborn, you are asking for humiliation. The subduing devil staff lightly waved upwards and blocked the Yama seal. The mountain-like Yama seal could no longer descend. No matter how King Yenluo urged his strength, the Yama seal did not move at all. Instead, it flashed and quickly shrunk. King Yenluo turned pale with fright. He wanted to take back the Yama seal, but he found that a large hand had already grasped the Yama seal firmly in the palm of his hand. The Yama seal fell into the hands of the Dizong of Goguryeo. King Yenluo's eyes were about to split open, but there was nothing he could do. He felt a deep sense of powerlessness. He glared at the Dizong of Goguryeo and Tang Jing with resentment, gnashing his teeth. Dizong of Goguryeo, you are helping outsiders. This is making the entire ghost realm your enemy. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because your cultivation is high. Dizong of Goguryeo shook his head. I have never bullied others with strength. As for Tang Jing's request, it is a reasonable request. Humans and the ghost realm rely on each other for survival. Why must we fight to the death? Since ancient times, the two worlds have been living in harmony. Ever since you guys absorbed the energy of the human world, the ghost realm has been in trouble. Even the 9 underworlds has been turned from a holy land of cultivation to hell. This is the punishment of the heavenly Tao. Don't you know? Don't talk about these nonsensical things. I will not be bewitched by you. King Yenluo stubbornly stretched his neck. Suddenly, his eyes lit up when he saw someone walking in from outside the palace. He was overjoyed and shouted, Cakravarti King, you are here. Let's work together to take down the Dizong of Goguryeo. We will make sure that this traitor of the ghost realm has no place to stay. Cakravarti King's expression was very ugly. He had seen the battle just now and knew that even if he joined forces, they might not be a match for the Dizong of Goguryeo. Moreover, if he did this, he would be paving the way for King Yenluo. There was no benefit for him. He had already become a loner. Even his city and people no longer existed. He could not help but feel disheartened. Seeing that Cakravarti King was indifferent, King Yenluo was furious. Cakravarti King, are you also going to collude with the Dizong of Goguryeo and betray the ghost realm? King Yenluo, you keep saying that you have betrayed the ghost realm. In fact, you are the sinner of the ghost realm. If you had not agreed to King Songjiang's idea to absorb the energy of the human world, this would not have happened. Put down the butcher's knife. Everything is over. Dizong of Goguryeo advised. Put down the butcher's knife? Why should I put it down? Dizong of Goguryeo, even if I die, don't think that I will listen to you. King Yenluo laughed maniacally. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, a few figures suddenly flew in from outside the palace. They were the remaining 8 kings of hell. King Yenluo's eyes lit up as he was overjoyed. Dizong of Goguryeo, you should be the one listening to me now. You are already surrounded. Let's see how you are going to act arrogantly. Chapter 982. The 10 kings of hell blocked the entrance of the main hall, surrounding Dizong of Goguryeo and Tang Jing. However, after hearing King Yenluo's words, the other kings of hell didn't react with righteous indignation. Instead, they looked at Dizong of Goguryeo and Tang Jing apprehensively, their eyes filled with thought-provoking expressions. especially Dizong of Goguryeo, who attracted most of the attention. It turned out that Song Jianguang had already been caught by the other kings of hell outside and asked clearly. Regarding what happened in the 9 Serenities Hell, these kings of hell already had a rough understanding of it. They couldn't help but be deeply shocked by Dizong of Goguryo's strength. At the same time, a deep sense of powerlessness was born, so naturally, they didn't dare to act rashly. Now that they saw King Yenluo unable to resist Dizong of Goguryo, they were flustered and exasperated. How could they still listen to King Yenluo's instigation and become enemies with Dizong of Goguryo? Seeing that everyone was indifferent, King Yenluo was stunned for a moment, then flew into a rage. "What are you all doing? Dizong of Goguryo betrayed the ghost realm and colluded with this human. The evidence is conclusive, we must get rid of him as soon as possible." Song Jianguang stood out and said, "King Yenluo, back then you instigated everyone to become enemies with Dizong of Goguryo and trapped Dizong of Goguryo in the 9 Serenities Hell. Now you're still bewitching people like this. Do you think everyone will still listen to your bewitchment?" Song Jianguang had already thought it through very clearly. Even if he joined forces with the 10 kings of hell, he might not be a match for Dizong of Goguryo. Therefore, it was better not to stubbornly persist in going down the wrong path and become enemies with Dizong of Goguryo. His current plan was to win the favor of Dizong of Goguryo and take advantage of the fact that King Yenluo was still in the dark to ruthlessly suppress him and weaken his prestige. As for Dizong of Goguryo's objective, Song Jianguang was still unclear. However, he had already made up his mind to stand firmly on King Yenluo's side. Hearing Song Jianguang's words, King Yama's eyes widened in disbelief. Although the two of them had fought openly and secretly in the past, Song Jianguang still didn't dare to confront him so recklessly. Could it be that Song Jianguang had also colluded with Dizong of Goguryo? King Yama was shocked by this judgment. Song Jianguang was already a huge threat to him. Now that he had a strong ally like King Yenluo, he was no longer a match for them. No wonder Song Jianguang was so fearless. King Yama thought that he had instantly understood the cause and effect, and his expression was extremely ugly. "Do you all listen to Song Jianguang?" Seeing that the other kings of hell didn't say a word, King Yama asked indignantly. A few kings of hell who were familiar with King Yama hesitated for a moment before advising, "King Yama, don't be angry. This matter needs further consideration. How could Dizong of Goguryo betray the ghost realm, don't you think so?" King Yama didn't buy this kind of behavior. Instead, he was furious. These guys usually flattered him, but at this critical moment, they actually dropped the ball. This was a blatant betrayal. As the head of the 10 kings of hell, King Yama usually kept his word. Other than Song Jianguang, who occasionally challenged his dignity, no one else dared to. Now, these kings of hell actually obeyed him. How could he not be angry? "You guys are doing this on purpose, right? Good, very good. This is Fengdu City's Yama Palace, my territory. I have the final say. You guys want to take advantage of your numbers to deal with me? You guys are too naive." King Yama had already lost his mind. Song Jianguang's lips curled into a smug smile. King Yama's thoughts and shrewdness were not as deep as his. After being provoked and squeezed, he was finally about to explode. King Yama roared and launched an attack. However, he didn't attack Dizong of Goguryo. Instead, he attacked Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was the root of all the problems. Moreover, he had let him escape last time, causing King Yama to lose face. Therefore, he wanted to take the opportunity to kill Tang Zheng. No one expected that he would sneak attack Tang Zheng as King Yama. Even the Dizong of Goguryo and Tang Zheng didn't expect this. Seeing King Yama's attack in front of him, Tang Zheng finally reacted as if he had woken up from a dream. Looking at the opponent's attack that was sure to succeed, Tang Zheng understood that with his strength, if he fought against it, only death would await him. Most likely, even the Dizong of Goguryo wouldn't be able to save him. However, he didn't sit still and wait for death. Instead, a meaningful smile appeared on his face. With a thought, a figure appeared in front of him, blocking King Yama's attack. Bang! King Yama struck his opponent. However, his opponent only staggered a few steps back. He didn't fall, nor did he suffer any serious injuries. Instead, as if enraged, he roared toward the sky. A large saber descended from the sky, fiercely slashing towards King Yama. This disruptor was naturally the Asura. Tang Jing knew that he wouldn't be able to block King Yama's attack. Coincidentally, he sensed that the Asura in Sumeru World was about to break through the suppression. Thus, he directly released Sumeru World, blocking King Yama's attack. The Asura had an undying body. Although King Yama's attack was very fierce, it couldn't kill him. Instead, it completely enraged him. The Asura's saber was extremely ferocious. With a single slash, it severed one of King Yama's arms. Even King Yama himself didn't have time to react. This was because the Asura's attack was too fierce and sharp. The other kings of Hell were also shocked by this scene. In the blink of an eye, King Yama had lost an arm. This was too inconceivable. Who was this guy? How could he have such powerful battle prowess? He was clearly summoned by that human. How could this human have such a mystical power? In fact, even Song Jiangwang's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. This was because when he left, the Netherworld King hadn't summoned the Asura yet. Thus, he didn't recognize the Asura. However, when he saw the Asura's attack just now, Song Jiangwang already knew how powerful it was. More importantly, where did Tang Jing find such a powerful ally? During the previous battle, why didn't Tang Jing summon such a powerful ally? One question after another circled in Song Jiangwang's mind, causing him to be at a loss. Dizong of Goguryeo initially wanted to stop him, but he stopped at the last moment. Without a doubt, Tang Jing's ability to adapt to the situation was at the peak of perfection. If he hadn't summoned the Asura, then even if he resisted, he would definitely have suffered a great loss. However, now that he was unscathed, he resolved this crisis. This courage and adaptability made Dizong of Goguryeo praise him endlessly. Everyone was attracted by the battle between the Asura and King Yama. No one dared to interfere. In fact, they didn't even dare to breathe too heavily, afraid that they would miss the exciting part. King Yama sucked in a breath of cold air as he cursed angrily, "What the hell is this?" "Asura," Tang Jing said softly. However, these two words were like a clap of thunder that exploded among the kings of Hell. Asuras were legendary existences. Who would have thought that they would be controlled by a mere human? The shock and horror in their hearts was unimaginable. Dizong of Goguryeo also guessed everyone's thoughts, but he didn't point out the origin of the Asura. Tang Jing didn't care about what the others were thinking. He only paid attention to the Asura. After seeing that he didn't stop after cutting off King Yama's arm, he chased after him. The Asura blade directly slashed towards King Yama's head, as if he wanted to split him in half. King Yama couldn't care less about the pain and the monstrous anger in his heart. He took advantage of the momentum and rolled, miserably dodging the attack. Bang! The Asura blade slashed the floor, and a crack spread in all directions. A huge ravine appeared in the Yama Palace. Merely a single strike possessed such might, and it caused the hearts of the other kings of Hell to tremble like cicadas in winter. They subconsciously switched places with the king of Hell, and they couldn't help but notice with sorrow that they were probably unable to dodge that strike from before and were directly slashed into two. This conclusion made them feel a deep sense of helplessness, but they still stared at the Asura with wide eyes, wanting to know more about him. King Yama fled in a sorry state like a stray dog. From left to right, from bottom to top, there was no place to hide in this huge palace, and there was no safe place to protect him. He was completely exposed to the Asura's pursuit. "King Yama, now do you agree to return my shooting sun arrows to me?" Tang Jing calmly asked. King Yanluo gasped for breath and said. Tang Jing didn't mind. He faintly smiled and said, "Fine, I'm not in a hurry. However, if you die later, then don't blame me for not warning you." King Yama gnashed his teeth in hatred, but he couldn't do anything about Tang Jing's words. He really couldn't understand why the Asura would listen to the words of a human. However, he didn't know that if he hadn't attacked the Asura earlier, the Asura's attention would have been attracted by others and he wouldn't have been chasing after him like this. King Yama almost died under the Asura's blade several times. Although he was lucky enough to survive, there were many more wounds on his body. It was a ghastly sight. The hearts of the other kings of hell trembled as they saw this. They directly listed Tang Zheng as one of the most dangerous people. Later on, if Tang Zheng had any requests, as long as it didn't endanger their lives, they shouldn't act recklessly. Otherwise, the King Yama's fate would be a lesson for them. Tang Zheng didn't know that his unintentional action had such an effect. He stared at King Yama without blinking. Suddenly, the blade flashed and one of King Yama's legs flew up. The Asura's attack was fast, accurate, and directly removed the leg. King Yama immediately staggered and fell to the ground, unable to escape the Asura's attack. The Asura's blade came crashing down, as if it wanted to chop off King Yama's head. King Yama screamed in fright. Facing death, he finally couldn't maintain his calm and dignity. His reaction was similar to that of an ordinary person. Suddenly, the sound of chanting scriptures rang in his ears. The Asura's blade actually stopped above his head, as if his head wouldn't be saved if it went any lower. King Yama raised his head in shock. He looked at the Asura's blade that was inches away from him, and then looked at the Asura's face that gradually turned from malevolent to calm. A storm rose in his heart. Even in his dreams, he couldn't figure out what was going on. Chapter 983. The other kings of hell were also shocked by this unforeseen event. They all stared at Tang Zheng with their eyes wide open. A human being was actually able to control such a terrifying existence like the Asura. This was truly a fantasy, but the scene in front of them was so real that they couldn't deny it. Immediately, their gazes towards Tang Zheng became very complicated. The raging waves in their hearts couldn't be calmed down for a long time. After Tang Zheng finished reciting the Ksitigarbha Sutra, the Asura completely quieted down. With a wave of Tang Zheng's hand, the Asura disappeared without a trace. Then, he walked in front of King Yenluo, looked down at him and said, "Are you going to make a meaningless resistance?" King Yenluo shook his head like a stray dog. "Give me back my son shooting arrows." Tang Zheng shouted. King Yenluo completely lost his temper. He submissively handed over the sun-shooting arrows with both hands. Looking at the last sun-shooting arrow, Tang Zheng's gaze became excited. He took the sun-shooting arrow and with a thought, stored it in Sumeru world. Finally, the corner of his mouth revealed a smile. He looked at King Yenluo in ridicule and said, "If you had handed it over earlier, wouldn't it have been better? Why did you have to cause so much trouble?" King Yenluo was so angry that he almost vomited blood, but he didn't dare to say anything. He lowered his head deeply. This time he really lost face. He lost an arm and a leg. His strength would definitely be greatly reduced. Even if he didn't die, what awaited him in the future wouldn't be a bright future. The other kings of hell looked at Tang Zheng with burning eyes, guessing what he would do next. Unexpectedly, Tang Zheng took a step back and didn't continue to be aggressive. Everyone was incomparably surprised. They didn't expect him to actually retreat. Dizong of Goguryeo said, "King Yenluo, now that you are seriously injured, if you persist in going about things the wrong way, I'm afraid the consequences will be even more serious." King Yenluo had already completely lost his fighting spirit. He understood that the ghost realm was probably going to change. He weakly said, "Dizong of Goguryeo, whatever you say, it will be so." Dizong of Goguryeo slightly nodded. "All right, then I announce that the battle between the human world and the ghost realm will end here." From then on, the two realms were at peace. As for the matter of the Tree of Life absorbing the source energy of the ghost realm, this is something that the ghost realm did to the humans many years ago. Now, it is the cycle of cause and effect, so you don't have to worry too much about it. The human world will return to the big world, and our ghost realm will not perish because of becoming a small world. This is the promise that I, Dizong of Goguryeo, give to everyone. None of the other Yamakings were convinced by Qin Ye's decisiveness, but there was nothing they could do to refute him. Song Jiangwang was the first to agree. Dizong of Goguryeo is right. I support him unconditionally. King Yama looked at Song Jiangwang with disdain. The other kings of hell also nodded in agreement, and the King Yenluo could only dejectedly agree. Looking at this scene, Tang Jing heaved a sigh of relief. This was already an excellent result. He didn't dare to ask for more. He looked at Dizong of Goguryeo gratefully. Dizong of Goguryeo nodded at him without batting an eyelid and said, "Tang Jing, are you satisfied with this result?" Dizong of Goguryeo actually asked for Tang Jing's opinion. This made the other kings of hell's expressions become even more interesting. Tang Jing's weight subconsciously increased in their hearts. Everything will be as Dizong of Goguryeo says. Tang Jing said respectfully. Dizong of Goguryeo nodded in approval. Since that is the case, then everything is settled. Even so, the hearts of the other Yama kings did not relax. This was especially so for the Yama king. He looked at the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva with a pitiful expression. As long as the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva gave the word, his life and death would be decided. Tang Jing, King Yenluo committed a crime in the past, but now his arms and legs are all damaged. How do you think we should deal with him? Dizong of Goguryeo asked. Tang Jing was stunned. He didn't expect the Dizong of Goguryeo to ask him how to deal with King Yenluo. He looked deeply at King Yenluo and fell into deep thought. The other kings of hell's hearts were in suspense. They all guessed that King Yenluo wouldn't be able to escape death. Even King Yenluo himself turned pale and trembled. After a long time, Tang Jing said, "Humans are not saints. How can they not make mistakes? King Yenluo is the same. I think he should have a chance to turn over a new leaf." These words were like coming back from the jaws of death. The haze in King Yenluo's heart was swept away. He couldn't help but look at Tang Jing with tears of gratitude. Although King Yenluo had a lot of grievances in his heart, at this moment he was sincerely grateful to Tang Jing. King Yenluo was very clear about the other kings of hell's thoughts. The kings of hell were always fighting openly and secretly. They couldn't wait for their opponents to fall. King Yenluo was the first to bear the brunt and became the target of the others. In addition, he was seriously injured. It was difficult for him to maintain his position as the leader of the 10 kings of hell. Tang Jing could have taken his life, but in the end he let him go. This caused King Yenluo to have mixed feelings. In fact, Tang Jing's thoughts were very simple. It was impossible to kill all the 10 kings of hell. Song Jiangwang had many tricks up his sleeve. If he killed King Yenluo, Song Jiangwang's strength would definitely increase. This was definitely not something that Tang Jing wanted to see. By leaving King Yenluo, he could restrain Song Jiangwang. Moreover, if he left a rift in the ghost world would be too busy to fend for themselves. This way, even without the Dizong of Goguryeo, the human world would be much more peaceful. The others didn't know what he was thinking. They all raised their thumbs and praised Tang Jing's kindness. Dizong of Goguryeo also nodded secretly. He deliberately threw this question to Tang Jing with the intention of testing him. Tang Jing's answer satisfied him. This was the kind of person who cultivated the Ksitigarbha Sutra. He was merciful. He didn't make the wrong choice. The other kings of hell felt that it was a pity, especially Song Jiangwang. Leaving a future threat like King Yenluo was definitely not a good thing for him. Why was this person so soft-hearted? He actually didn't kill King Yenluo directly? However, Song Jiangwang didn't dare to say these thoughts. He could only sigh secretly and secretly plan in his heart. King Yenluo's strength was bound to plummet. He should seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and sit on the throne of the 10 kings of hell. King Yenluo felt as if he had been pardoned. He said gratefully, "Thank you for not killing me. I was blinded by all the things in the past. I will definitely turn over a new leaf in the future." Tang Jing nodded lightly. Since he had achieved his goal, he didn't want to stay any longer. He was afraid that his family would worry about his safety. "I'll send you off," Dizong of Goguryeo said. The other kings of hell also wanted to send him off. They wanted to build a good relationship with Tang Jing. They also wanted to find out the true relationship between him and the Dizong of Goguryeo. There was no doubt that due to the existence of the Dizong of Goguryeo, Tang Jing could almost do whatever he wanted in the ghost realm. No one dared to provoke him. The 10 kings of hell firmly remembered Tang Jing's appearance. When they returned, they were bound to remind their subordinates that if they met this person in the future, they must be respectful and respectful. It was best to keep a respectful distance and not offend him in the slightest. On the city wall of Fengdu City, the cold wind whistled. Tang Zheng and the Dizong of Goguryeo stood on the city wall and looked down at the sticks below. The kings of hell stood in the distance. They wanted to hear the conversation between the two, but they couldn't hear a single word. Looking at the sticks below, Tang Zheng subconsciously thought of the time when he fell down and almost lost his life here. He couldn't help but sigh. The Styx River is a fierce river for both ghosts and humans. Fengdu City was built on the banks of the Styx River. King Yama really has absolute courage and boldness. Dizong of Goguryeo said to himself, not without appreciation. Tang Zheng nodded secretly and said, just now, I acted on my own initiative and let King Yama live. I wonder what advice Dizong of Goguryeo has for me? Dizong of Goguryeo laughed loudly. You did well. Everyone makes mistakes. This saying of the human world is also applicable to the ghost realm. Back then, King Yama did make a mistake, but he also contributed to the ghost realm all these years. Moreover, if King Yama dies, the ghost realm will be in chaos. This is not a scene I want to see. Dizong of Goguryeo had deep feelings for the ghost realm, so these words came from the bottom of his heart. Tang Zheng understood and secretly rejoiced at the wisdom of his choice. If he had stubbornly declared that King Yama was sentenced to death, then he would have offended Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Now that Dizong of Goguryeo was his most powerful helper in the ghost realm, he couldn't afford to offend him. Moreover, Dizong of Goguryeo had done him a favor. If it wasn't for Dizong of Goguryeo, his trip wouldn't have been so smooth. Even if he had painstakingly found out about the 10 Kings of Hell's plan for the Tree of Life, it was only treating the symptoms but not the root cause. Only by dealing with it could the Tree of Life avoid a catastrophe. Now that Dizong of Goguryeo had made the final decision and directly cut off the 10 Kings of Hell's improper thoughts for the Tree of Life, he didn't have to worry about the safety of the Tree of Life. He only had to wait until the human world was upgraded to a big world and stopped the corresponding array, then everything would be fine. In the future, the ghost realm will be more prosperous when you control it. Tang Zheng said sincerely. A world with an absolute powerhouse leading it could erupt with more power than the 10 Kings of Hell who were in a state of disunity. Dizong of Goguryeo didn't seem to be happy. Instead, he sighed and said, the situation in the ghost realm is very complicated. It's not as simple as you think. Back then, when he promoted equality for all living beings, he was opposed by all the kings of hell. Although his cultivation was high, he didn't become a Buddha after all, so he was restrained everywhere. He also understood how difficult it was to promote his own ideas. Even though his cultivation had improved to a higher level and he had become a Buddha on the spot, he was not blindly optimistic. The 10 Kings of Hell didn't seem to dare to oppose him, but when it really touched their fundamental interests, they would never resign themselves to it. However, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva was not discouraged. He was very persistent in his beliefs. He turned his head and put away all the complicated thoughts. He said, you don't have to worry about me. This is the path I chose. I will walk it with determination. I believe that one day, all living things in the ghost realm will be equal. It will be peaceful and peaceful. It will not be the foul world we are in now. Seeing his persistence, Tang Zheng nodded in admiration. Then I look forward to the arrival of that day. I'll take my leave now. Welcome to the ghost realm when you have time. In this big ghost realm, I can only tell you a little heart to heart. In addition, you must recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra every day to suppress the Shura. You can't let him harm the human world. Dizong of Goguryeo reminded. Chapter 984. Tian Chanzi stood in front of the Tree of Life. Looking at the black vortex in the sky, he frowned and fell into deep thought. Now, he had once again activated the Universal 8 Wilderness Formation to protect the Tree of Life. Everything was back to normal. Tang Zheng, you brat, you must come back. We are all waiting for you. Moreover, you have so many romantic debts. If something really happens to you, those female friends of yours will cry their eyes out. Tian Chanzi had been waiting here for many days. Because he was too worried about Tang Zheng, every day felt like a year. He was not in the mood to cultivate. He stared at the black vortex in the sky and the tree of life in a daze. Suddenly, his eyes changed. He stood up subconsciously and stared straight at the sky. The black vortex seems to be changing. He opened his eyes wide and found that the color of the vortex was fading little by little. Finally, it disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Holy T. What's going on? He exclaimed and almost jumped up. Suddenly, he had an idea. Could it be that the boy worked? The black whirlpool had indeed disappeared, leaving behind only the blue sky with a gentle breeze. Tian Chanzi was anxious. Like an ant on a hot pot, he paced around and muttered to himself, I hope it worked. Is Tang Zheng okay? He was more worried about Tang Zheng's safety. After all, even he who was in the apotheosis realm did not dare to enter the ghost realm. The danger of Tang Zheng's trip could be imagined. He couldn't wait to go to the ghost realm to find out. Suddenly, there was a huge change in the airflow not far away, and a pitch-black ghost gate suddenly appeared. Tian Chanzi was shocked and immediately overjoyed. He exclaimed, that boy must be back. He rushed over quickly and happened to see Tang Zheng swaggering out of the ghost gate. Tian Chanzi grabbed him, looked him up and down, and circled him. Seeing that he was really fine, he breathed a sigh of relief with lingering fear and said with emotion, You are really lucky, kid. You're not hurt at all. How did you do it? Looking at Tian Chanzi, Tang Zheng sincerely felt a sense of intimacy. He said with a smile, Of course it's because I'm strong enough. Stop bragging. Do you think I don't know what you are capable of? Hurry up and tell me what happened. Why did you make that black vortex disappear? Tian Chanzi urged impatiently. Tang Zheng looked up, and sure enough, he didn't see the black vortex. He smiled and asked, Have you been very worried about me these past few days? I'm not worried about you. It's the women in your family who are worried about you. Tian Chanzi was very worried, but he refused to admit it. Tang Zheng smiled and didn't point it out. He told him the whole story of the trip to the ghost realm. Tian Chanzi was stunned and couldn't close his mouth for a long time. He exclaimed, It turns out that there are so many secrets in the ghost realm, and you said that the Dizong of Goguryeo became a Buddha. His strength is too strong. It is said that he has reached the first stage of the Mahayana realm. The first stage of the Mahayana realm. Tian Chanzi's heart suddenly jumped. Even in the human world, there were many practitioners and strong people, but the masters of the Mahayana realm were absolutely rare. The Dizong of Goguryeo had such a powerful strength, which made Tian Chanzi feel powerless. You are really a lucky star. If it weren't for you, the Dizong of Goguryeo would have attacked the human world. Even if the Empyrean Fairy and I were there, I'm afraid we may not be the opponent of the Dizong of Goguryeo. Tang Zheng shook his head. The Dizong of Goguryeo is a pacifist. He won't attack the human world indiscriminately. Moreover, the other kings of hell were suppressed this time because of the Dizong of Goguryeo. Yes, if I am lucky enough to meet him, I must thank him in person. Tian Chanzi sighed. If there are no major events in the Yin and Yang realms, the Dizong of Goguryeo will definitely not set foot in the human world. The opportunity to meet is not easy. Tian Chanzi smiled bitterly. I just said it casually. Since the tree of life is no longer in danger and is protected by the array, let's go home together. I don't know how it is at home. Okay. Of course, Tian Chanzi did not want to stay here alone, so he left with the tang on his sword. However, they did not go straight to the capital. Instead, they went to the Li Palace first. The two descended from the sky and landed in the valley of the Li Palace. A series of figures rushed in from all directions. In the blink of an eye, the two were surrounded. At first, Li Xiaotian stayed in the Li Palace alone and tried to subdue the disciples of the Li Palace. Later, Granny Li escaped. In order to prevent her from sneaking back to the Li Palace, Tang Jing sent Wu Junshan and a few others to help Li Xiaotian. He did not know how the situation was now. When he saw a group of Li Palace disciples surrounding him, Tang Jing did not have time to make a move before someone in the crowd recognized him. It's you. Everyone calmed down. It's not an enemy. Hearing this, the tense atmosphere immediately eased. Tang Jing breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the thing he was most worried about did not happen. Li Xiaotian's methods were truly exceptional. He had probably already subdued the Li Palace. The crowd dispersed, and a person majestically walked over. Taking a closer look, it was actually Li Xiaotian. Compared to before, she had a more severe aura. The other disciples of the Li Palace all bowed to her respectfully. Seeing this scene, one could understand the prestige Li Xiaotian held in their hearts. When Li Xiaotian saw Tang Jing, her cold face immediately blossomed into a smile. She quickened her steps and arrived in front of him. She could not help but grab his hand and say, "You've finally returned." Li Xiaotian had also heard about Tang Jing's trip to the ghost realm. She did not approve of his risky actions. Now that she saw him standing in front of her safe and sound, a heartfelt joy spread out from within her. Tang Jing was grabbed by her soft and jade-like hand. A strange feeling flashed through his heart. He could not help but be infected by her smile. He asked, "Are you well?" Li Xiaotian smiled sweetly. "I'm very well. What about you? Do I look like I'm not well? Let's go inside to talk." Li Xiaotian invited him. Then she turned around and ordered the others, "You can all disperse." "Yes, holy maiden." The others respectfully withdrew. Li Xiaotian personally led Tang Jing and Tian Chanzi into the highest room. This room was some distance away from the other buildings. Its layout was completely different. Just by looking at it from the outside, one could feel an extraordinary aura. After entering, Tang Jing was attracted by the elegant furnishings. However, this room did not seem to be for a woman to live in. On the contrary, it seemed very masculine. There were no men in the Li Palace, which made Tang Jing rather surprised. "Whose room is this?" Tang Jing curiously asked. Li Xiaoan beamed and said, "I specially prepared this room for you. It's the best room in the Li Palace." "Prepared for me?" Tang Jing pointed at his nose, incomparably flabbergasted. Li Xiaotian nodded. "Now that you are the new master of the Li Palace, this room can serve as a foil to your status." The new master of the Li Palace? Tang Jing was confused. He suddenly remembered that he did not see Wu Junshan and the others. He hurriedly asked, "Just what is going on? Where are Wu and the others?" "They just left yesterday and returned to the capital. As for why you are the master of the Li Palace, this is what I promised before. I will help you subdue the Li Palace." Li Xiaotian was like a child asking for credit. Her words were filled with joy. Tang Jing was flabbergasted. He asked, "How did you do it in such a short amount of time?" Li Xiaotian proudly raised her neck and said, "How did I do it? You don't need to ask. In any case, the entire Li Palace will respect you as the master. We have already firmly grasped the Li Palace in our hands." Tian Chanzi also felt that it was inconceivable. This woman was a spirit of 100 changes and was most adept at catching people off guard. This time, he also could not figure out how she did it. He could not help but look her up and down. He thought that Tang Jing leaving her life was really a wise decision. Her martial arts could not be considered the highest, but her ability was absolutely unparalleled. Even Mu Hongyan, this kind of outstanding business talent, might not be able to compare to her. This subduing of the Li Palace was enough to prove that although she had lost her memory, she did not lose her ability. Many things must have happened in this period of time. Tang Jing's heart moved. He understood that the matter was definitely not as simple as she downplayed it. Seeing Tang Jing looking at her with a burning gaze, Li Xiaoyan muttered, "Something did happen. Granny Li came back. I almost died under her hands, but Wu and the others rushed back in time. In the end, Granny Li fled in a sorry state." When Li Xiaoyan mentioned Granny Li, there was not the slightest fluctuation in her emotions. It was as if she was talking about a stranger, which made Tang Jing feel a little strange. However, he also rejoiced. Fortunately, he had arranged for people to help Li Xiaotian. Otherwise, she would not have the chance to stand in front of him alive. Then, did the disciples of the Li Palace not react? Tang Jing asked. Of course there was. Yu led a group of people in an attempt to counterattack. After failing, she led a few disciples of the Li Palace and escaped with Granny Li. However, I can guarantee that the remaining disciples of the Li Palace will wholeheartedly submit to you. Li Xiaotian said confidently. Yu resisted. Then, at that time, weren't you in danger? Li Xiaotian shook her head. I had already made preparations. Because, sooner or later, she would have rebelled against me. It's just that it was a little early, so she wouldn't be able to stir up any big waves. Are you always this confident? Am I? Li Xiaotian smiled sweetly. You didn't realize it yourself? Perhaps. First, take a look and see if you are satisfied with this room. If you are not satisfied, I will have people redecorate it. I am not that particular. Moreover, I am not a permanent resident of the Li Palace. Although you are not a permanent resident, you are still the master of the Li Palace. You must follow the rules. Li Xiaotian insisted. Seeing her insist that he was the new master of the Li Palace, Tang Jing did not back down. The position of the Li Palace was very important. If he held it in his hands, it would be a great help. All right, I will do as you say. That night, Tang Jing stayed in the room. In the dead of night, there was a knock on the door. It's me. Opening the door, he saw Li Xiaoyan standing gracefully outside. The night wind blew her skirt, revealing 2 slender jade legs. Under the illumination of the light, they were very eye-catching. It's so late. What's the matter? Tang Jing asked curiously. Actually, I have another matter to report to you. Why didn't you say it during the day? This is a matter of the Li Palace. It's best if other people do not know. She was clearly guarding against Tian Chanzi. Chapter 985. In the dead of night, a single man and woman were in the same room. The lamplight shone on Li Xiaoyan's face, adding a hint of haziness and gentleness to it. Li Xiaotian had cultivated the art of seduction since she was a child, so she normally presented herself as a fierce person. Now that she was in front of Tang Jing, she completely shed her fierce exterior and revealed a feminine charm that complemented her seduction technique. Naturally, her charm soared. However, Tang Jing's interest was piqued by her words, so he didn't pay too much attention to her appearance. When I was organizing the Li Palace's intelligence network, I discovered that the disciples of the Li Palace are scattered all over the world. In particular, there are many disciples of the Li Palace in the families of high officials and nobles in the capital. The majority of the Li Palace's intelligence is gathered by them, Li Xiaotian solemnly said. Oh! Tang Jing's eyes brightened. He had previously had this question in his mind. The Li Palace was known for its intelligence network, so where did their intelligence come from? Moreover, the Li Palace was filled with female disciples, so Tang Jing couldn't figure it out no matter how much he thought about it. Seeing that Li Xiaotian had taken the initiative to mention this matter, he hurriedly asked, "What exactly is the situation?" Many of these disciples of the Li Palace are wives and lovers of high officials and nobles. The Li Palace's intelligence network is gathered from them, but this isn't the key point. It turns out that the Li Palace's connections are the key. These past few years, Granny Li has only allowed these disciples to gather intelligence. I believe this is a reckless waste of God's gifts. Li Xiaotian bluntly criticized. Reckless waste of God's gifts? Tang Jing was slightly astonished. He didn't expect Li Xiaotian to so directly criticize Granny Li. Yes, these disciples are a huge resource that can play an even more important role. They can even influence the decisions of the upper echelons of the government. I heard that your relationship with the government isn't very good. We can definitely start from here and slowly eliminate the enmity the government has for you. Pillow talk is very powerful. Li Xiaotian said and couldn't help but laugh. Pillow talk? Tang Jing shivered. Li Xiaotian was really amazing. He actually thought of this idea. If he could really whisper pillow talk into the ears of those high officials and nobles, the pressure he faced from the government would be much less. Ever since the incident in the imperial city, the chief's attitude towards him was very intriguing. He had to consider the influence of this. Although he was strong enough, he didn't want to be surrounded and intercepted by the government and be judged as an enemy. What do you think of my idea? Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, Li Xiaotian asked as if he wanted to take credit. Tang Jing gave him a thumbs up and praised from the bottom of his heart, "You're so smart." "Thank you for the compliment." Li Xiaotian was immensely pleased with himself. He pursed his lips and smiled brilliantly. But Tang Jing suddenly changed the topic. "Water can carry a boat, but it can also sink it. These people might not listen to us, right? There must be some of Granny Li's confidants among them. If these people also spread pillow talk against us, wouldn't that be very disadvantageous for us?" Li Xiaotian smiled faintly. "Don't worry, I already expected this situation. I have a way to deal with these disobedient people." Seeing him so confident, Tang Jing didn't ask any more questions. However, thinking of how she risked her life to save a child she didn't know, she certainly wouldn't do anything too excessive. "I did so well, are you going to reward me?" Li Xiaoyan stared at Tang Jing with his sparkling eyes and asked mischievously. Looking at her beautiful face so close, smelling the faint fragrance of a woman, especially the witty charm that was inadvertently revealed between her eyebrows, Tang Zheng's head swayed. He quickly stabilized his mind and said, "What kind of reward do you want?" "I haven't thought about it yet. I'll tell you when I think about it," Li Xiaotian said. Tang Zheng readily agreed. This time, Li Xiaotian really did a big thing for him. If she had any requests, he would do his best to satisfy them. "That's right, will you be in any danger if you stay here? After all, Granny Li is still free and unfettered outside. Are you worried about me?" Li Xiaotian asked back. "Sort of. Yes means yes, no means no." "What do you mean sort of?" "I'm very happy. Don't worry, I will take good care of myself. Even if Granny Li makes a comeback, I still have a way to escape. Moreover, it wasn't easy for us to subdue the Li Palace. We can't just leave it like this." Li Xiaotian methodically analyzed. Her words were very reasonable, so Tang Jing didn't try to persuade her anymore. He just reminded her to pay attention to her own safety, and then told her that he and Tian Chanzi would leave tomorrow. "So soon? The scenery here is pretty good. Why don't you stay for a few more days?" Li Xiaotian's expression darkened. "There are still too many things in the capital. If I don't get rid of the Lord, my heart will never be at ease. In addition, the 100 Faces Star Lord will definitely not let this matter go. There are undercurrents surging. I don't dare to be careless," Tang Jing said in a low voice. Li Xiaotian thought for a while, then nodded. "A man's ambition is to travel far. You have the qualifications, so you should establish a foundation. In short, you don't have to worry about the Li Palace. I will do my best to manage it. It will definitely not be inferior to the previous Li Palace." Li Xiaotian didn't stay for long. After chatting for a while, she took the initiative to leave. Standing in the darkness, her eyes were especially bright. Staring at Tang Zheng's room, the corner of her mouth hooked up in a faint smile. The next day, Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi left the Li Palace early in the morning. They flew on their swords and went straight to the capital. Since Tang Zheng's strength had greatly increased, flying on his sword consumed less and less true qi. Therefore, even if it was a long journey, it didn't affect him much. Since he had such a convenient means of transportation, why would he need to take a plane or a train? Suddenly, whoosh! The roar of a fighter jet came from the sky. 2 fighter jets flew out from the clouds. The 2 of them jumped in fright and hurriedly hid in a white cloud. Only then did they realize that the sky was not safe. They couldn't underestimate the military's air defense. "Chengjiang, I'm Huang He. Did you see 2 people just now?" One of the fighter jet pilots asked his comrade. "Huang He, you must be seeing things. How can there be people in the sky? Maybe it's an eagle." The comrade laughed and joked. "It shouldn't be. My eyesight has always been very good." This small episode didn't affect Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi. It just made them more cautious. They landed safely in the suburbs of the capital. They didn't dare to fly on their swords without restraint in the capital. Not to mention that the capital was full of tall buildings and many eyes. The most important thing was that the air defense was many times stronger. If they didn't pay attention, they would be treated as invaders and shot down. Once they arrived in the capital, the two of them went their separate ways. Tian Chanzi didn't want to go back to Tang Zheng's home. Tang Zheng walked through the streets and alleys. Suddenly, he stopped and came to a familiar yet strange place, the Go Club. Ji Wuxiang's Go Club was quiet in this bustling city. Its artistic conception was elegant, like a paradise. Ji Wuxiang is a mysterious person, especially those people in his Go Club. They look ordinary and have no skills at all, but they give off an extraordinary feeling. If there's a chance, I must go to this Go Club to investigate. In the capital, other than the officials, the only person who could attract Tang Zheng's attention or interest was probably this mysterious Ji Wuxiang. As for Yi Xuanji and the other experts, Tang Zheng didn't put them in his eyes at all. Not long after, he finally arrived at his door. Before he could get close to the door, a few figures jumped out. "Lord Envoy, you're back." So these people were the Witch clan who were secretly protecting the villa. The Witch clan loved and respected Tang Zheng from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, seeing him was even more exciting than seeing a great beauty. Looking at the energetic young men, Tang Zheng patted their shoulders and said, "Thank you for your hard work." They shook their heads like rattles and said excitedly, "It's not hard at all. It's our honor to serve you, Lord Envoy." Creak. The door opened and a beautiful figure flew out. It was actually Linga. Linga was like a dancing fairy. With a tap of her toes, she jumped into Tang Zheng's embrace and called out sweetly, "Master, you're finally back. Linger's luck is really good. I just returned to the capital and I actually saw you. Linger missed you so much." After parting ways in the south of Yunnan, Linger was busy with work and had no time to return to the capital. The two of them only talked on the phone occasionally, and this girl was reluctant to hang up every time. "Wow, Linger, you've grown taller again." Tang Zheng patted Linger's head and laughed. Linger's head was buried in Tang Zheng's chest. Hearing this, she raised her head and looked at him with her crystal-clear eyes, asking, "Really?" Of course, it means that Linger has grown up. Linger's mental age did not match her appearance at all, but she was growing up little by little. Looking at her cute appearance, Tang Zheng really felt like he was looking at a younger sister. Linger has grown up. Linger grabbed Tang Zheng's hand and rubbed it on her white and tender face as she said happily, "Why are you back in the capital?" "Linger is going to hold a concert." "Concert?" Tang Zheng was shocked. He didn't know much about Linger's work. He didn't expect that she was qualified to hold a concert. "I don't understand either, but anyway, Linger is very happy to be able to sing." Tang Zheng nodded. Linger had always loved singing. In the beginning, it was because she liked singing that she entered the entertainment industry. Now it seemed that her development was getting better and better. He said, "Then when you hold a concert, I'll also be a listener, okay?" "Really?" Linger's eyes immediately became round, black and bright. Seeing Tang Zheng nod his head, she jumped up in joy. "That's great, Linger is really happy." Wu Junshan, Lan Yu and Wu also came out to welcome him. When the three of them saw Tang Zheng, they were extremely excited and almost ran over. Wu immediately threw himself into Tang Zheng's embrace and hugged him tightly, as if he was afraid that he would run away. He muttered to himself, "You're finally back, you're back?" Tang Zheng also hugged her tightly, patted her back and said, "I promised you that I would definitely come back." Chapter 986. Marshall reluctantly left Tang Zheng's embrace, but she still held onto his hand tightly. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, she was unwilling to let go. Feeling her attachment, Tang Zheng felt a warm current flow through his heart. On the other side, Linger also tightly hugged one of his arms, as if he was hugging a woman on his left and right. The Witch clan was not surprised. Instead, they felt that these women were truly honored to be able to obtain the emissary's affection. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at their son with excitement and relief. During this period of time, Lan Yu had become much more haggard. She thought about it day and night and was extremely worried. Tang Jing nodded to the two of them. Lan Yu asked with concern. I don't know how many dangers you've experienced on this trip. It's been hard on you. Tang Jing smiled and shook his head, saying that it wasn't hard. Let's not stand outside for now. Let's talk inside. Lan Yu said. The few of them entered the house and found that only the Empyrean Fairy and Fu Yao were there. Where are the others? Tang Jing asked curiously. Those women of yours went to the island and haven't returned yet. Yi Dingdang and are like stalkers all day, staring at each other. If one of them goes out, how can the other not follow? The Empyrean Fairy said calmly. Tang Jing shook his head and smiled bitterly. Only the Empyrean Fairy dared to speak so unscrupulously in front of him. I didn't expect your trip to the Ghost Realm to end so quickly. The Empyrean Fairy sat up straight and looked at Tang Jing with interest. Although the Empyrean Fairy had never been to the Ghost Realm, she had heard a little about it. She did not think that it was some kind of paradise, but a place of true danger. The fact that Tang Jing had returned so quickly was truly out of her expectations. With the help of a benefactor, everything went smoothly. What benefactor? Although the Empyrean Fairy's cultivation was high, she had never been to the other world. Naturally, she was full of curiosity, and she couldn't hide her curiosity about the nobles. Wu Junshan, Lan Yu, and the others also widened their eyes and stared at Tang Jing. Tang Jing briefly explained the trip to the Ghost Realm. When the few of them heard this, they sucked in a breath of cold air, especially Lan Yu and Wu. Their expressions were especially worried. Wu grabbed onto Tang Jing's palm and broke out in cold sweat. It's so dangerous. Don't go to that damned place again. Marshall said with lingering fear. Lan Yu hurriedly agreed. That's right. The Ghost Realm is too dangerous. Don't ever go there again. After all, the 10 Yama Kings are not to be trifled with. If they plot against you, it'll be too late for regrets. Master is really amazing. Ling'er was innocent and didn't feel that it was too dangerous. Instead, she felt that her master was an unparalleled hero. The Empyrean Fairy listened with great interest. Her eyes became brighter and brighter. She suddenly nodded and said, so the Ghost Realm not only has the 10 Yama Kings, there is also an even more powerful Dizong of Goguryeo. This is really surprising. Dizong of Goguryeo upholding justice and the two realms living in peace is definitely a good thing for us. For the time being, we don't have to worry about the Ghost Realm. After pausing for a moment, the Empyrean Fairy changed the topic and said, however, the Ghost Realm still has the 10 Yama Kings. In the future, there will be some unforeseen events. Therefore, we can't let our guard down. With the Dizong of Goguryeo presiding over the situation, there shouldn't be any unforeseen events, right? Tang Jing felt that the Empyrean Fairy was making a mountain out of a molehill. The Empyrean Fairy smiled. In the past, I saw too many people and too many things. The Ghost Realm is not much different from the human world. Everything is developing and changing. The Dizong of Goguryeo can preside over the situation now, but it doesn't mean that he can in the future. Therefore, we still have to be fully prepared. Wu Junshan, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. Fu Yao is right. Humans are the most fickle, and ghosts are no exception. It's still too early to discuss this. Tang Jing didn't want to talk too much and changed the topic. You didn't tell anyone that I went to the Ghost Realm, right? According to your instructions, we didn't tell anyone. That's good. Tang Jing breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want Yi Dingdang and the others to worry about him. Just as they were talking, the door was pushed open and An walked in angrily. She said indignantly, Yi Dingdang, don't go too far. Wherever I go, you follow. Do you think I'm a spy? Yi Dingdang's clear voice came from outside the door. Who said I thought you were a spy? The main road is to the sky, and we'll go our separate ways. This isn't your country, this is my country. I'll go wherever I want to go. What can you do about it? Anne was about to retaliate when her eyes suddenly stared blankly. She screamed and jumped up like a rabbit, pouncing straight at Tang Jing. Looking at the menacing end, Tang Jing jumped up from the sofa and dodged to the side. And missed and fell on the sofa. Tang Jing was really shocked by this scene. When he left and followed him. Later, he let Yi Dingdang watch her so that they had a chance to leave. They just met and actually pounced on him. If he was really pushed down by her in front of so many people, then he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. Doubts arose in his heart. When did Anne become so fierce? It didn't seem like her style before. Although Anne dared to do things, she still had the blood of the royal family flowing in her body. She had the natural grace of the royal family. How did she become like a violent female leopard? However, he didn't know that Anne's life had undergone earth-shattering changes during this period of time. Ever since she openly announced that she liked Tang Jing in front of so many people and wanted to pursue him, Yi Dingdang had listed her as the #1 enemy. That was why she gave up on the island trip and stayed behind to guard, and so that she wouldn't have a chance to take advantage of any loopholes. And couldn't beat Yi Dingdang in a fight. She was also no match for Yi Dingdang in a brutal way. Being watched every day almost drove Anne crazy, but there was nothing she could do. If looks could kill, Yi Dingdang would have been riddled with holes and died countless times. Yi Dingdang knew that she couldn't do anything to Anne, so she took a step back and took this kind of non-violent action. While Tang Jing wasn't around, it was best to annoy and then pack up and leave. This was the best outcome. But in the end, what Yi Dingdang didn't expect was that although Anne was on the verge of exploding every time, in the end, she took a few deep breaths and actually endured it. A dignified princess actually endured such a huge grievance. If it weren't for her love rival, Yi Dingdang would have to admire her. Yi Dingdang couldn't do anything, but she became even more vigilant. Hearing Anne scream, Yi Dingdang also suddenly saw Tang Jing on the sofa. Before she could react, she realized that Anne had actually rushed toward Tang Jing. Yi Dingdang was so angry that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. 3 words appeared in her mind: shameless. Seeing that and missed, Yi Dingdang finally laughed gloatingly. She slipped and also rushed in front of Tang Jing. Like a swallow returning to the forest, she threw herself into his arms and winked at Anne as if to show off. When Anne saw that Yi Dingdang had caught up with her, she angrily glared at Tang Jing as if blaming him for not understanding the situation and avoiding her. A fragrant scent entered his nose as a soft body fell into his arms. Tang Jing subconsciously hugged Yi Dingdang, and her hands hooked around his neck. Ahem! Wu Junshan coughed dryly, as if reminding them that there were outsiders present. Tang Jing's expression was resentful when he realized that everyone was looking at him strangely. Just now, he was hugging one woman on each side, and now there was another one. This kind of scene was not suitable for children. Stand properly. How old are you already? Still making such a fuss? Tang Jing pretended to be serious as he reluctantly let go of the softness in his palm. Yi Dingdang smiled sweetly and acted coquettishly. You still dare to scold me? Humph, you have no conscience. To think that I was so worried about you. Tang Jing resentfully said in a low voice. So many people are watching. Yi Dingdang bit her lip and glared at him. She said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, I'll deal with you tonight. Tang Jing's head shook. When he was in the ghost realm, his pure yang energy had exploded. If it weren't for luck, he would have exploded and died. Hearing Yi Dingdang's provocative words, his thoughts couldn't help but stir. His pure yang energy seemed to be restless again. Tang Jing, you've been gone for so long. I miss you very much too. Seeing the two separated, Anne took the initiative to walk over. She stretched out her arms as if she wanted Tang Jing to give her a big hug. Looking at Yi Dingdang's eyes that were about to spit fire, Tang Jing didn't dare to enjoy this beauty's kindness. He acted as if he didn't see it and politely said, Thank you for Anne's concern. I'm too tired from the journey. I'll go back to my room to rest. You can continue chatting. The atmosphere in the living room was so strange that Tang Jing didn't want to stay and attract the fire. He quickly slipped away and returned to his room. Yi Dingdang was like a general who had won a battle. She proudly glanced at Anne as if to say that compared to her, she was still too young, and angrily stomped her foot and gritted her teeth. She refused to admit defeat and said, Let's wait and see. She walked back to her room in her high heels. Her room was next to Tang Jing's. It was her act of moving her room that provoked the other women. They hated her blatant act of poaching, But because she was too open and honorable, and also had the status of a princess, the others couldn't do anything about it. Wu Junshan looked at this scene worriedly. He exchanged glances with his wife. The two tacitly walked to the side and whispered to each other. Tang Zheng's charm to attract girls is too great. This house is like a war all day long. It's not a good thing. As his mother, shouldn't you remind him? Wu Junshan said worriedly. How can I say something like this? Shouldn't you be the one saying it as his father? Lan Yu rolled her eyes. Although this is a bit inappropriate, at least it proves that our son is very charming. You old man naturally can't compare to him. Wu Junshan bitterly smiled. How can I compare to him? I'm just worried that there will be a fire in the backyard. After all, women can be very scary when they go crazy. Lan Yu glared at him and asked, Are you saying that I'm very scary? When was I talking about you? Am I not a woman? I'm talking about other women? Chapter 987. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. A rustling sound came from the window. Tang Zheng suddenly opened his eyes and guessed that there was someone outside the window. The window was gently pushed open, and a person jumped in. His movements were nimble and vigorous. Tang Zheng jumped off the bed like a carp and grabbed the person's shoulder. With a shoulder throw, the person was thrown onto the bed. He quickly followed up and reached out with his hand, grabbing the other person's neck. His series of movements were as smooth as flowing water. "Ayo!" A cry of surprise sounded. "What are you doing? Are you going to kill me?" "Ding dang, why is it you?" Tang Zheng was startled by this voice. He thought that an enemy had snuck in. He didn't expect it to be this girl. Tang Zheng quickly turned on the lights and saw Yi Dingdang lying on the bed. Her clothes were messy and her nightgown was rolled up to her thighs, revealing her two white thighs. "Why can't it be me?" "Heng, you were waiting for someone else, right?" "Wu." Yi Dingdang angrily stood up with her almond eyes wide open. "Nonsense, there's no such thing." "Heng, don't say you didn't think about it." Yi Dingdang glanced at him with a look that said she had already seen through his thoughts. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Looking at her beautiful appearance under the light, his heart moved and he hugged her slender waist. "What are you doing? Let go of your claws." Yi Dingdang slapped his hand a few times. Seeing that there was no way to stop him, she just let him do whatever he wanted. Seeing Yi Dingdang so close, Tang Zheng's breathing couldn't help but become heavier as he said, "Did you miss me? That's why you snuck into my window?" "Who missed you? Shameless." Yi Dingdang snorted and turned her head away. However, the expression between her eyebrows betrayed her. She really missed him. After being apart for such a long time, it was better to be apart than to be newly married. This kind of feeling could only be understood by those involved. "But I miss you." Tang Zheng stared intently into her eyes, his voice full of emotion. Yi Dingdang's cheeks reddened as she said, "Who asked you to think about it? You're thinking about An, right?" "Hey, you're still talking about her? I think you're asking for a beating." Tang Zheng immediately put on a straight face and slapped Yi Dingdang's butt. The slap was clear and loud in the night. Yi Dingdang felt as if she had been electrocuted. Her entire body trembled, and her cheeks immediately turned into a ripe apple. She clenched her teeth and struggled to resist the throbbing in her heart. Tang Zheng's head swayed as he took the opportunity to press her down on the bed. Yi Dingdang's hands were pressed against his chest, but she still couldn't resist his demonic claws. Very quickly, her body and mind completely fell into his hands. The moonlight spilled in from the window and shined on the two bodies on the bed. The moon seemed to be shy as it secretly hid in the clouds, leaving only the two naked bodies tormenting each other under the light. "Ayo!" Suddenly, Tang Zheng softly cried out, "What are you doing?" He only saw Yi Dingdang biting his shoulder. 2 rows of snow-white teeth left 2 rows of teeth marks on his shoulder. Yi Dingdang's eyes revealed a pleased look as she exhaled and said, "Who told you to torment me and flirt with other women? This is the result." "Are you a dog?" "You're the dog." Yi Dingdang bared her teeth as if she wanted to take another bite. "All right, you bit me, so I'm going to bite you." Tang Jing suddenly lowered his head and opened his mouth. You can't bite there? At daybreak, Tang Jing walked out of the room with a faint smile on his face. He was reminiscing about last night's exciting battle. Yi Dingdang was like a little pepper. She was really hot enough to leave him with a rich aftertaste. His pure yang energy was completely appeased for the time being. He felt refreshed and full of energy. Yi Dingdang walked down from the second floor. Her face was glowing like a flower that had been nourished. Last night, although her legs were weak, she still quietly returned to her room. This act of deceiving herself made Tang Jing laugh endlessly. Seeing Tang Jing looking at her, Yi Dingdang fiercely glared at him. After breakfast, Tang Jing sat under a big tree in the courtyard, basking in the sun and resting with his eyes closed. Linger sat at the side, holding a fruit plate. She used a fork to fork a small piece of fruit and fed it to him. He lazily opened his mouth and the fruit entered his mouth. He enjoyed it incomparably. He was simply a hedonistic young master from the old society. Linger was a big star, but she was not tired of doing the work of a little servant girl. Her face was brimming with a smile that was brighter than the sun. Yi Dingdang looked at the two of them at the door and helplessly shook her head. Linger was really hopeless. Was there a need to spoil him like this? Tang Jing, how could he bear to order such an innocent and cute little girl around like this? And, who was sitting at the side, did not have this kind of treatment. On the contrary, because of Linger's existence, she almost could not get a word in edgewise. Yi Dingdang was happy to see and suffer, so she hid at the side and snickered. Who is it? Suddenly, the voice of a witch tribe warrior came from outside the courtyard. I'm looking for someone. A person said submissively. Who are you looking for? Tang Jing. Why are you looking for our Lord Emissary? Lord Emissary? The person was obviously stunned. He did not know what to do. Tang Jing recognized the voice. It was Yen Liang, his former tutor, but he did not want to pay attention to him. After all, they were practically from two different worlds. There was no need to ridicule each other for their past disputes. The school still hasn't given up. They still want to persuade me to go back to school? Tang Jing could not help but laugh. His life now was too dangerous and exciting. School life seemed like child's play to him. Moreover, the school had already cancelled his student record. He really did not have much interest in it. Go tell Tang Jing that Qi Shaoan wants to see him. Another old voice sounded. Tang Jing shot up from his chair and exclaimed in a low voice, Professor Qi, why is he here? He quickly walked to the door. As expected, Professor Qi Shaoan and Yen Liang were standing at the door. Yen Liang was very nervous. He did not know where to put his hands and feet. Qi Shaoan's hair was gray, but his expression was calm. He stood there proudly. Yen Liang's aura paled in comparison. Professor Qi, why are you here? Tang Jing greeted him warmly. Qi Shaoan saw Tang Jing and a smile appeared on his face. He teased, It's not easy to see you. You even have guards. Professor Qi, you must be joking. I have no choice. The capital city has not been peaceful recently. Yes, too many things have happened in the capital city recently. It's like the world has been turned upside down. Qi Shaoan lamented. His gaze involuntarily fell on Ling. She was standing by the side obediently with a plate of fruits. She was slender and elegant, very eye-catching. Brother, do you still want some? Ling asked while forking a piece of fruit. In front of outsiders, she automatically called him brother. This was something Tang Jing had repeatedly reminded her. She finally remembered it. I'm not eating. You go back to the house first. Oh, then I'll feed you later. Ling carried the plate of fruit and floated away like a fairy. All that was left was her beautiful back. In the eyes of Qi Shaoan and Yen Liang, the significance of this scene became extraordinarily significant. Qi Shaoan had seen Tang Jing's tricks. He was slightly surprised but did not pay much attention to it. Yen Liang, however, recognized Ling. Tang Ling, who had been making a lot of appearances recently, was very popular. Although Yen Liang was not a fan of celebrities, he was still a young man. It was not difficult for him to recognize her. Tang Ling was even prettier in person than she was on the screen. But why was she so nice to Tang Jing? She was like a maid serving him. This did not make sense. She was a superstar. Was this a movie? Seeing that Qi Shaoan had been invited into the courtyard, Yan Liang followed him in shamelessly. Princess, and you're here too. Qi Shaoan and knew each other. He nodded and greeted her, and stood up and returned the greeting politely. Professor Qi, nice to meet you. Yan Liang's brain shut down. Didn't An come back to China? Why was she at Tang Zheng's house? Tang Zheng was indeed a powerful man, but he could not be this powerful. Not only did he have a superstar as his maid, but he also had a European princess as his mistress. After both of them were seated, Ling walked out with a cup of tea. She said in a crisp voice, "Grandpa, please have some tea." Qi Shaoan smiled happily. "Okay, thank you, young lady." When Yan Liang saw Ling serving him tea, he hurriedly stood up. His face was as red as a tomato. He took the cup with trembling hands and sat down gingerly. "Professor Qi, long time no see. You look better than before," said Tang Zheng. Qi Shaoan shook his head. "I'm old and useless. I have to admit that I'm old." "You're the leading figure in the archaeological field. You're a walking treasure trove. You're not old at all. So many people are counting on you to teach them a thing or two." Qi Shaoan smiled happily and started chatting. Yan Liang could not get a word in edgewise. He sat awkwardly and felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. The two beautiful women sitting opposite him were too intimidating. Yan Liang's usual bossy attitude toward students was completely gone. He felt a little breathless. "Tang Zheng, let's not beat around the bush. I'm here on a commission," said Qi Shaoan. "Oh, what's the matter?" Qi Shaoan glanced at Yan Liang and said, "The school still hopes that you can go back to school. After all, your grades have always been excellent. The school doesn't want to lose a talent like you. As for the cancellation of your student status, it's all a misunderstanding. The person who did it has already been punished." "Professor Qi, the school's leaders are really smart. I can't believe they asked you to be their lobbyist." Tang Jing smiled and said teasingly. Everyone knew that Tang Jing was close to Professor Qi Shaoan. He was indeed the most suitable person to be their lobbyist. "Actually, I think that university life is still necessary. Although I know that you can't study forever, you can still study for as long as you can. This is a life journey. You shouldn't give up halfway," Qi Shaoan advised. Yan Liang seemed to have woken up from a dream. Only then did he remember his mission. He nodded hurriedly and said, "Professor Qi, you're right. University life is still necessary." Tang Jing glanced at Yan Liang casually. Yan Liang's heart skipped a beat. He quickly shut his mouth and chuckled awkwardly. "The school is very open-minded. If you have any concerns or requests, you can tell us. The school will try its best to satisfy you." Qi Shaoan continued persuading him earnestly. "You're tuning in to the Passion Page's YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."